Hey guys, tonight we slip into the soft glow of Victorian lamps and moonlit gardens to uncover the peculiar world of insomnia cures that Victorians swore by. Moonlight baths and lavender cordials leading the charge. Picture yourself in a high-ceilinged chamber, the velvet curtains drawn just enough to catch slivers of silver moonlight dancing on polished wood, while servants bustle elsewhere and you're left wide-eyed, wondering how anyone ever sleeps. You probably won't survive this on your first try if you're faint of heart or if you're prone to allergies, since those lavender bouquets sometimes triggered sneezing fits rather than slumber. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments so we know who is wide awake with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down a moonlit path that feels oddly familiar, as if an old friend offered you a nightcap made of starlight. From the 1840s onward, restless Victorians tried every trick in the book, some mainstream, others so fringed they'd make a modern wellness influencer blush. Historians still argue whether these therapies actually impacted the nervous system, or were purely placebo. But tonight, you're going to bask in the same silver glow and sip the same fragrant elixirs, imagining yourself part of a society that equated a good night's rest with moral virtue and physical health. In the first act of our sleepy drama, lavender cordials take center stage. You can almost taste the sweet, floral syrup on your tongue, a medicinal tisane distilled from lavender spikes steeped in clear spring water, then sweetened with honey or sugar. Mid-century pharmacists would charge $1 a vial for these cordials, claiming that a single sip could lull even the most phlegmatic soul into gentle drowsiness. Quirky enthusiasts sometimes added a twist, a drop of wormwood oil for extra potency, though that often resulted in vivid dreams of dancing skeletons rather than restful slumber. Not to be outdone, moonlight baths offered a nocturnal alternative. In select country estates, ladies and gentlemen would gather by garden ponds or marble-lined tubs under full moons, believing lunar rays possessed a curative quality. You'd remove your day garments for a silken gown or nightdress, then immerse yourself in mild water as the moon's pale fingers traced ripples across the surface. Some medical journals of the era even published temperature charts showing how exactly to time your dip for maximum relaxation. Yet scholars still debate whether the true benefit came from the ritual itself, slowing your racing thoughts. From staying outdoors in cooler air, which naturally lowers body temperature and invites sleep, you might find yourself chuckling at the idea of moonlit skinny dipping. But remember, Victorians created entire social seasons around such escapades. They'd serve chamomile tea afterward and recline on chaise lounges strewn with lavender sachets, permitting themselves an interlude of calm before the day's final bow. One mainstream historical fact: by 1876, patent medicine registers listed over 50 commercial sleep remedies, including several lavender-based concoctions. Meanwhile, fringe practitioners rumored that bathing on a crescent moon could realign your humors in ways unmatched by any daytime tonic. Throughout our journey, you'll sense the tension between earnest medical advice and the era's fascination with mysterious arcana. You'll see why a quick dip in moonlight felt as exotic as a voyage to the tropics, and why a sweet cordial was marketed almost like champagne for dreamers. Historians still argue whether such treatments reached beyond the upper classes or trickled down to working families who could ill afford them. But as you settle into this story, you'll begin to understand that sleep in the Victorian age was as much about social ritual as it was about biology. So take a deep breath and let your shoulders unwind. Feel the whisper of lavender on your cheeks, hear the distant echo of nightbirds, and imagine the water's cool embrace. We're about to wander deeper into parlors, pharmacies, and garden follies where cure-all remedies awaited the sleepless. And trust me, once you've met the characters and contraptions that defined Victorian insomnia therapy, you'll never look at your bedside lamp in quite the same way as the moon climbs higher. The night opens up its secrets to you, secrets bottled in cordial syrups and mirrored in still ponds. Lean back, let your eyelids grow heavy, and allow the ghost of a bygone remedy to soothe your mind. Our first stop is a closer look at the deafening urban roar that led many Londoners to seek solace under the stars. Imagine the city's rattling trams and clanking factories giving way to a silent garden where only the moonlight hums. You step off that silvery path and swing open an iron gate onto a cobblestone street, where gas lamps sputter like stubborn night owls reluctant to cede their perch to darkness. The air is thick with coal smoke, and every footstep echoes against brick facades where the clang of factory whistles punctuates the night. You probably won't believe how loud Victorian London could get after sunset. But imagine steam-powered trams rattling past your window at odd hours, and dray horses clopping impatiently outside taverns, every sound drilled into your skull until your temples throb. So before you drift further into moonlit serenity, maybe consider investing in a pair of earplugs. Victorians certainly would have, had they existed by 1880. London's population topped 5 million, with an estimated 60% living in districts so densely packed that nightly noise complaints topped municipal records on all-time high. of 1,200 cases in a single month, according to public health registers. Historians still argue whether the cacophony of clanging machinery or the ceaseless chatter in alehouses contributed more to insomnia, but either way, folks reached for any remedy that promised relief. You trudge past shuttered shops, and the smell of tallow candles mingles with the scent of baked potatoes from street vendors, but the sizzle, hot oil feels a lot like nature's middle finger to your weary nerves. In one narrow alley, a fringe practitioner once hung earthenware noise catchers studded with crushed eggshells, claiming they absorbed discordant sounds like a sponge. You might snort at the thought, but some addicts of these contraptions swore they could dim the racket. Enough to the very least whisper sweet nothings to a lavender-filled sachet. It's a quirky tactic akin to stuffing your ears with boiled lettuce leaves, another odd Victorian dare that reportedly muted the world by introducing a mild saporific sap. And let's not forget the parades and public entertainments that stretched long past dusk. Imagine a brass band's final crescendo at a local fete echoing in your bedroom long after the last tuba has gone silent. You might think a 21st century EDM festival would be no worse. But at least today's parties come with foam cannons, not horse-drawn carriages stomping by in the wee hours. One mainstream historical fact: by mid-century, municipal ordinances attempted to curb noise between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., only to be undermined by lax enforcement and sympathetic magistrates who wanted to keep spirits and taverns flowing. As you weave through the wakes of late-night horse cabs, you notice small clusters of window gardens, potted lavender and scented geraniums peeking through sash windows. Soldiers in a botanical trench against the urban assault. These survivors Victorian insomniacs of means relied on botanical sound masks, convinced that the gentle rustle of tiny leaves could neutralize industrial growls. Historians still argue whether plant-based aromatics possessed any genuine calming effect or simply offered a placebo to desperate sleepers. But let's be honest, if you were living atop a coal kiln, you'd attach mint sprigs to your ears, just to convince yourself you'd fallen into a fragrant dream. You pause before a gaslit pharmacy window displaying nervine elixirs and sedative lozenges, each promising to hush your rattled nerves better than any bedtime story. The labels boast ingredients like valerian root, hops, and dand for the particularly adventurous nightshade. This last component lands squarely in the realm of fringe, a tincture so potent it allegedly induced sleep after one drop, though skeptics warned it could send users straight into an involuntary coma. Historians still argue whether apothecaries truly dispensed such dangerous doses or if those tales were Victorian urban legends traded at shadowy soirees. A horse-drawn omnibus clatters past, forcing you to lean back against a cool stone wall. You remember the warmth of that lavender cordial from our first act, its ornate bottle glinting like a beacon of hope, and you wonder if a nip now might numb you against the din. But alas, public intoxication was frowned upon unless you were in a licensed tavern, and sips of an off-brand sleep syrup might land you in the stocks rather than silk sheets. Mid-19th century health boards recorded dozens of arrests for moonlight toasts made a trifle too spirited, suggesting that a good night's sleep sometimes came at the price of a hangover and a public lashing. Still, not all Victorian noise came from industry and revelry. Rag-and-bone men rattled their carts at dawn, sure, but they took their first rounds in the wee hours, long before you might dare to close your eyes. And let's not ignore the diverse voices of the city. French street musicians playing a outside Piccadilly, Italian flower girls hawking midnight roses, and in the East End peddlers of fried eels hollering at all hours. The nightly symphony was so eclectic that some Victorian elites held silent dinners, complete with hush panels and enforced whispers, a precursor to modern silent discos, if you will. The irony is delicious. They sought to throw a party in muffled tones so they could actually sleep afterward. You edge toward a quieter square, where gas lights have dimmed and only an occasional lantern warms the cobbles. Here, some intrepid souls gathered in outdoor clubs for what they called nocturnal retreats, trading gossip by lamplight until a butler ushered them indoors to the more genteel setting of bedroom sanctuaries. These retreats sometimes featured orchestras playing soft string quartets at dusk, stopping right at 10, lest the police arrive with their whistles and hasty citations. One mainstream historical fact: by 1890, at least 2 notable conductors resigned rather than ceased their performances before midnight, citing artistic integrity, though critics sneered that they enjoyed a late-night tipple behind the stage. Every footstep takes you closer to that silent refuge you crave, a chamber scented with lavender sachets and shielded by heavy drapes, your personal anti-noise fortress. There, perhaps, a moonlight bath awaits, or that sweet cordial you can sip like a dreamy champagne. But first, you must navigate the nocturnal melee, the rumbles, the squeaks, the unstoppable human chorus. In battling urban insomnia, Victorians mixed earnest science with mystical quirks, stitching together sleep rituals as elaborate as a royal ball. And now you stand at the threshold, ear tuned to every distant clank and whisper. The question is, which remedy will claim your allegiance tonight in herbal lullaby in syrup form? or a plunge into moon-touched waters where the city's roar fades into a gentle murmur? The answer lies ahead, in the arms of class and comfort, where aristocrats and laborers alike sought solace under lamplit skies. But that, dear listener, is a story for the next hour. You slip through the grand iron doors of a country estate, the leather soles of your slippers muffling your steps on polished marble, and you're immediately struck by the difference between upstairs and the street's racket. Here, Insomnia looks less like a desperate scramble and more like a carefully staged performance. Velvet-clad servants extinguish lamps in the drawing room while you're guided across a Persian rug to a pavilion stocked with moonlit baths and polished copper tubs. You probably won't survive a weekend here if you crave spontaneity. Everything follows an exact timetable down to the minute. So relax your shoulders and imagine those lavender stays waiting like tiny purple sentinels at the foot of your silken niche TGOWN. By contrast, in the northern workhouses and factory dormitories, you'd be lucky to find a single cot free of straw infestations or the greasy imprint of a previous occupant. You trudge down narrow wooden bunks, each one barely more inviting than the last, and stumble over a hunk of coal someone calls a pillow. One mainstream historical fact: by the 1851 census, laborers in industrial districts averaged only 5.5 hours of sleep per night due to grueling work shifts spanning up to 60 hours a week. Historians still argue whether these abbreviated slumbers arose more from economic necessity or from the sheer adrenaline of adrenaline-fueled factory whistles. Upstairs, the moonlit pavilion features pristine water lit from below by hidden gas jets, casting dancing shadows on the scalloped edges of the marble basin. You slide into the bath, decorum just cool enough to soothe overheated nerves while a butler curls a lavender-infused towel at the back of your neck. Meanwhile, working-class souls used a much rougher method, dunking their heads in the trough, where cattle drank, then rubbing straw across their temples to simulate a spongy calm. It's a quirky fringe tactic that apparently worked about as well as stuffing your ears with boiled lettuce did. To mute city clamor, you breathe in sweet lavender and hear the soft hiss of water feeding the bath below. But down in the dorm, the only fragrance is kerosene and damp wool. There are exhausted laborers collapsed in shifts, one snoring in a crooked heap, another clutching a barley water flask as though it were a life raft. Scholars still debate whether barley water's slight sweetness genuinely helped relax the digestive tract or if it was mainly a welcome distraction from the sting of seeping coal dust in your throat. Imagine being served a glass of lavender cordial in dainty crystal, that syrupy floral sip meant to coax you toward dreamland. Upstairs, you'd swirl it around your tongue, tasting honeyed petals that feel like a lullaby in liquid form. Downstairs, you'd maybe steal a swig from a jerry-rigged demijohn of cheap gin mixed with nettle infusions, convinced that the burn in your chest would finally knock you out. It rarely did. Instead, you'd wake at dawn with a pounding headache, and the ironic realization that medicinal alcohol was a cure that demanded its own cure. You pause to admire the fashion choices upstairs. Nightcaps embroidered with lace and silver tassels perched on plush cushions. Downstairs, hand-me-down caps, stiff with sweat and patched with scraps of second-hand flannel. One fringe tidbit: a few radical dwellers in the East End sewed rabbit fur into their caps, believing animal pelts transferred hibernation instincts to the wearer, yet when summer came, the result was a recipe for heatstroke rather than heavenly sleep. Historians still argue whether this practice ever gained traction. Beyond a handful of eccentric tailors, saucepans rattled faintly in the kitchen, signaling the next part of your nocturnal ritual, a light supper meant to lull you into an alimentary coma. Upstairs, you'd nibble on rice pottage softened with cream, while downstairs a solitary matron might spoon out watery porridge by a single flickering candle. You trudge between these worlds in your mind, feeling the opulent calm of embroidered cushions dissipate into the harsh gloom of iron bunks that groan under the weight of exhaustion. Another mainstream historical fact: by 1870, sleep deprivation was so common among factory laborers that at least 20% of industrial accidents were directly attributed to drowsy workers nodding off at dangerous machinery stations. Yet the upper classes, ensconced in sanitized quiet, often blamed sleeplessness on nervous temperament rather than admitting social conditions contributed. You can almost hear them whispering behind jade goblets, debating whether nerves were a sign of moral weakness, at least until they slipped into their lavender baths themselves. As the moon arcs slowly across the sky, the estate's nightly bustle winds down to hushed steps and the soft rustle of silk. You might even catch the distant hoot of an owl beyond the rose garden. Meanwhile, the factory dorm is lit by a single oil lamp, its shade sooty and tilted, and the soundtrack is a chorus of raspy coughs and half-dreamt mumblings. In one fringe practice, some laborers kept jars of live snails under their beds, believing the mollusk's slow rhythmic movements radiated a calming energy. The idea sounds downright absurd, but those who tried it swore the snail shells provided a hypnotic focus that dulled restlessness, although historians still argue whether any of this was more than a placidic game of the mind. You're offered another lavender cordial upstairs, this time with a sliver of candied violet floating like a sleeping fairy. Below, Someone's mother is likely stirring a pot of dill tea infused with goose fat, convinced that the fatty oils would coat the stomach and stabilize the Minder strategy met with equal parts, grimaces and grateful sighs. Both worlds share the same goal: to conquer the darkness and drift off without wrestling demons or dock managers. You rise from your moonlight bath, your skin dewy and your mind unspooling like silver thread. You adjust your tasseled nightcap and pad down a silk corridor towards a four-poster bed draped in lavender-scented linens. On the landing below, workers shuffle towards their bunk rooms, pressing themselves into frayed quilts barely thick enough to mute the cold. One mainstream historical fact: Victorian linen weavers documented that the average duvet loft was only 2 inches at best, insulation so meager that frost could form on the inside of windows by sunrise. You settle into that four-poster mattress, inhale the floral hush, and feel sleep tugging at your eyelids. No snails required. The lamp dims to a soft glow as the butler closes your bedroom door, leaving behind only the muted scent of lavender sachets and the glow of a single moonbeam. Below, the dormitories erupt in a chorus of snores and coughs, and you realize the class divide in sleep rituals was more than a matter of wealth. It was a difference between crafted serenity and sheer exhaustion as you sink into slumber. Remember that whether you bathed by moonlight in silk or collapsed onto rough straw, the quest for rest was universal. The methods varied from cordial sips to nettle gin, from snail jars to bunny for capsput. The yearning for a peaceful night bound every Victorian sleeper. Historians still argue whether these class-based rituals genuinely improved rest or simply offered a comforting illusion to those too weary to ponder the truth. Close your eyes now. Think of that lantern-lit pavilion and the hush of a country night, of lavender-scented air and silk against skin, and let your breath deepen. Sleep is just a dream away. You slip from your silken sheets into a plush velvet chair beside a marble-topped nightstand where a brass lamp casts a reassuring amber glow. Here, medicine's learned minds theorized that sleep, or the lack of it, was deeply rooted in the nervous system's delicate balance. You trudge through pages of leather-bound tomes in your mind, recalling how Victorian doctors likened nerves to taut piano wires, ready to snap if struck too harshly by life's stresses. Historians still argue whether this focus on nerve exhaustion truly advanced our understanding of insomnia or merely pathologized everyday fatigue. One mainstream historical fact: in 1869, Dr. George Miller Beard coined the term neurasthenia to describe a condition of nervous exhaustion marked by sleeplessness, headaches, and irritability, a diagnosis so prevalent that by the 1880s, nearly every respectable sanatorium offered specialized treatments for it. Physicians recommended strict regimens of rest cures, involving complete retreat from intellectual exertion, and sometimes celebrated nervous breaks as a badge of modern sophistication. You imagine yourself following doctor's orders, with draconian dedication, lying supine in a quiet room, your only task to think of nothing at all, an exercise that sounds easier than it felt. But fringe practitioners took this nervous system obsession to new heights. In shadowy London basements, you might have encountered galvanic machines, wooden contraptions festooned with copper coils, delivering gentle electric shocks claimed to realign your frazzled nerves. You probably won't volunteer for a galvanic slumber, but devotees swore a brief vibration under their pillow eased the mind into drowsy submission. Historians still argue whether these early electrotherapy sessions merited any genuine therapeutic value or if the buzz of prospecting electricity simply distracted restless thoughts. You lean forward as if drawn toward a faint hum emanating from some hidden device, picturing technicians in starched aprons adjusting dial-like knobs to calibrate a nervous current. In one quirky twist, an eccentric Dr. Blenkinsop designed a rotary sleep chair, a spinning seat that slowly rotated your body in hypnotic circles until you drifted off like a top unwinding. Fringe journals documented that certain patients reported feeling as if cradled by a cosmic lullaby, though skeptics suspected the invention was better suited for inciting motion sickness than restful slumber. Back in mainstream practice, another Victorian sleep theory revolved around digestive health. Leading physicians advised against heavy evening meals, warning that stomach work burned precious nervous fuel meant for the brain's nightly repose. So you envision a porcelain tureen of barley broth or a bowl of rice pudding delivered by lamplight, each spoonful designed to settle your stomach and spare your nerves. Scholars still debate whether these dietary prescriptions reflected genuine physiological insight or simply mirrored prevailing moral judgments about gluttony. On your nightstand, you spot a delicate vial labeled phosphorus elixir, recommended for those deemed brain workers, writers, artists, and journalists who burned the midnight oil. Mainstream apothecaries heralded phosphorus as the critical element sustaining nerve function, so nightly doses promised to restore the lost spark of tired minds. Yet fringe chemists sometimes sulked phosphorus into peculiar compounds. You'd sip a glowing, almost radioactive-looking liquid that faintly glowed in the dark. Insiders whispered that some bottles were rebranded mint julep, and more than one curious soul awakened at dawn convinced their dreams took place in phosphorescent caves. In an adjacent shelf, You glimpse jars filled with Hatter's decoction, a concoction originally crafted to calm anxious souls caught in the throes of mercury poisoning, the infamous side effect of felt making. You shudder to recall the neurotoxic haze that plagued Hatters, leading to involuntary tremors and insomnia so severe it inspired the phrase, "mad as a Hatter." Historians still argue whether the decoction, which combined opiates with valerian root, mitigated mercury's damage, or merely compounded the drowsy delirium. No discussion of medical theories would be complete without the hydropathic movement water cures that ranged from drenching your ankles in ice-cold streams to entire body immersion in tepid baths. Mainstream hydropathists believed alternating hot and cold water baths trained the capillaries, coaxing them to open and close with rhythmic precision, thus bolstering nerve resilience. You imagine stepping into a shallow marble basin as gentle jets of water play across your limbs, then being swaddled in heated blankets to lock in warmth, a cyclical ritual designed to lull you into a dream-ready state. Yet on the fringe, some enthusiasts elevated hydropathy to theatrical extremes. One renowned practitioner staged nocturnal water theater in subterranean vaults where participants reclined in stone troughs under dripping stalactite-crafted faucets, accompanied by soft choral chants. You probably won't survive the damp chill without a woolen wrap, but believers insisted the ceremony plunged your conscious mind into a state so primordial that REM sleep followed almost instantly. Scholars still debate whether this spectacle provided any measurable benefits beyond immersive relaxation. You lean back against the plush chair, noticing how your pulse slows to a gentler rhythm, as if the very idea of rest is whispering to your veins. Doctors of the era often recommended quiet visualizations, akin to modern guided imagery. You'd close your eyes and picture a calm lake at dawn, an allegory for peaceful slumber. Oddly enough, some patients combined this with dream filters or aromatic spritzers containing bergamot and hyssop sprayed onto pillowcases to seed pleasant visions. Despite the floral promises, a handful of sleepyheads reported dreamscapes so vivid they jotted them down upon waking, their bedside journals blossoming with nighttime epics far removed from their waking monotony. Then these medical theories lay the Victorian obsession with systematizing sleep, transforming every breath, sip, and sensation into data points in a grand experiment of rest. You flick a delicate fan beneath your chin, recalling how some physicians recommended mechanical ventilation devices, lace-framed screens that fluttered tiny flags whenever the room's air grew stale, ensuring you inhaled a constant breeze believed to nourish your brain's capillaries. Fringe accounts mention inventors who attached tiny bellows to portrait frames, so your own likeness would breathe as if alive, filling the room with mimicry of a guardian's gentle exhalation. Yet for all their devices and doctrines, Victorian doctors faced a fundamental mystery. Why did some patients sleep soundly, under harsh electric light, while others tossed and turned in absolute darkness? Historians still argue whether their theories truly captured the complexities of the human mind, or if they merely replaced one superstition with another. But tonight, you're free from those debates. You have only the soothing tap of your fan and the promise of quiet repose. As you lean forward to unscrew the cap of another Lavender cordial, a fallback remedy, you realize how medical theory and domestic ritual merged in the Victorian quest for sleep. Science provided vocabulary, neurasthenia, hydropathy, galvanism, while home remedies lent sensory comfort and ritual structure. Together they formed a tapestry of rest strategies as intricate as any tapestry adorning those country walls. You close your eyes momentarily, envisioning the gentle pulse of an electric current or the rhythmic ebb of water against marble. Your breathing deepens, syncing with an unseen scientific principle at work. Soon the theories themselves fade, leaving only the serene conviction that rest is achievable, one careful experiment at a time. You ease into a musty parlor, the velvet wingback chair inhaling your weight like a contented sigh, and you're greeted by the earthy aroma of dried herbs hung from rafters in neat bundles. Tonight, you're trading high-tech galvanic coils for small pewter pots brimming with nature's bounty. You probably won't survive this herbal immersion if you've ever killed a houseplant by overwatering, but don't worry. These dried sprigs only require a gentle steep. So settle in, cradle your china teacup, and let's explore why Victorians poured their hopes into leaves and roots instead of electric shocks. One mainstream historical fact: by 1858 the British Pharmacopoeia officially listed valerian root, chamomile flowers, and hops as approved sedatives, elevating them from folklore to respectable medicine. Physicians prescribed sleep draughts containing these herbs to patients suffering from neurasthenia, and busy apothecaries stocked shelves with neatly labeled vials. You can almost hear the small bells chiming over the pharmacy door as customers shuffled in, desperate for a vial of valeriana, blissfully unaware that the name sounded like a Roman gladiator. Historians still argue whether these plants actually interact with GABA receptors in the brain, or if the relief came from the comforting ritual of tea-making and perhaps a dash of placebo magic. You cradle your cup of chamomile infusion, noticing how the pale gold liquid, it seems to glow in the lamp's amber light. In high society drawing rooms, hosts would serve these teas with dainty finger sandwiches, winking at guests who dared admit they couldn't sleep. Yet downstairs in a tenement flat, the same flowers might be steeped in a chipped enamel mug, jostled by the clatter of children's boots on rickety floorboards. Fringe enthusiasts even claimed that if you twisted 6 chamomile blossoms counterclockwise while reciting a lullaby, the brew's potency doubled, though that trick sometimes resulted in nobody falling asleep and a slight singe on your fingertip. Instead, chamomile's gentle reputation made it a staple, but valerian was the true bold adventurer of the herbal world. You take a deep inhale, its musky, slightly foxy scent wafting up like a woodland miststand. Imagine Victorian patients wrinkling their noses at the pungent aroma. Still, valerian tinctures sold briskly. Pharmacists recommended 10 to 20 drops in water 30 minutes before bedtime. One quirky tidbit: some apothecaries added a sliver of crushed belladonna berries to their valerian mix, promising a deeper, dreamier sleep, though overly zealous brewers sometimes sent customers into fits of disorientation. Historians still argue whether those dangerous additives ever matched the calm lull of pure valerian or just substituted one nightmare for another. Next, you spot a stout earthenware jar stamped hops, its dry vines curling like lazy serpents. Hops weren't just for beer. Victorians brewed them into pillow sachets and nightcaps, believing the lupulin glands held soporific power. You might laugh, but some upper-crust insomniacs wore padded hoppy contraptions on their heads, earning the affectionate nickname hopheads among servants. The essence of hops, bitter, resinous, and vaguely piney, would infuse the chamber with a forest floor hush. Scholars still debate whether inhaling hop vapors truly promotes sleep, or if the effect was merely the forced calm that followed an aristocrat's latest scandal being scrawled in lurid newspapers. In the corner, there's a small table displaying a curious tea blend labeled Dreamweaver's Tea. It's a mix of passionflower, skullcap, and blue vervain herbs prized for mellowing the mind. You lift the silver tea strainer, practically hearing the herbs whisper, "Drink us," and float away. Fringe herbalists used this blend to induce hypnagogic visions, fleeting images seen on the edge of sleep, though a few patrons admitted they felt slightly possessed by the spirit of a restless poet. One claimed to have composed a sonnet midst, another swore his dreams were haunted by honeybees reciting Shakespeare. Historians still argue whether such herbal combinations sparked genuine neurochemical shifts or simply encouraged storytelling in the half-light of twilight. You steep a handful of dream weaver's leaves in steaming water, stirring gently with a mother-of-pearl spoon. The liquid curls with violet hues, and you imagine a bygone housekeeper in a lace-rimmed apron pouring this elixir for a sleepless lord. But downstairs, an inventive laborer might have swapped one of those fancy herbs for a handful of nettles, believing the sting upon contact with skin transferred a soporific potency when ingested. It's a fringe practice that sounds medieval, but some swore by it, trading minor skin welts for a night free of tossing and turning. You probably won't volunteer for a nettle nap, but there's comfort in knowing absurdity and earnest intent often danced hand in hand as you sip the Dreamweaver's infusion. The flavors mingle: herbal earthiness softened by an undercurrent of floral sweetness. You hear the faint hiss of that hydropathic jet you encountered earlier, its memory reminding you how water and herbs often combined in Victorian sleep cures. Some bathhouses included tubs scented with lavender, hops, and mint, a botanical brew that turned a simple soak into an aromatherapeutic ritual. Scholars still argue whether these combined stimuli overwhelmed the senses into sleepy submission, or if bath time itself, regardless of fragrance, lowered core body temperature and signaled nighttime. A neglected teacup catches your eye, filled with a deep crimson brew of rose petals and hawthorn berries, an unusual pick from the realm of cardiotonic herbs. You might wonder how a heart-strengthening remedy made its way into a sleep regimen. But Victorians often believed that a calm heart ensured a calm mind. Mainstream practitioners mixed hawthorn with small doses of laudanum in discreet teas, though such blends skirted moral acceptability and ventured into the realm of pharmacological flirtation. One fringe anecdote tells of an aristocrat so enamored with rose hawthorn tea that she replaced her bedside oil lamp with a rose-scented candle, resulting in a faintly sticky, dream-inducing gloom. You swallow the crimson sip, feeling a gentle warmth spread from your chest to your fingertips. It's a reminder that the Victorians saw sleep as a holistic tapestry: digestion, circulation, and spirit all woven into one. You wrap a lavender hop pillow around your shoulders, the tiny pellets shifting like grains of sand, promising to cradle your neck with botanical precision. You remember that omelette of dill tea and goose fat from last night's vignette and smile at how diverse the remedies could be. By now your eyelids feel as heavy as the bundles of dried hyssop propped by the window. The herbal cabinet, once a mere curiosity, has become a sanctuary of scent and solace. You think of modern times' countless sleep apps and white noise machines and marvel at how Victorians trusted in humble leaves and roots. You probably won't survive a week on nothing but brew and breathe therapy. But as the steam curls from your cup, you sense the magic in taking a moment to slow down. Historians still argue whether these herbal rituals genuinely rewired the mind's sleep centers, or if the true alchemy lay in pausing, inhaling, and believing in a gentler night. Yet here you are, wrapped in the botanical hush, Your senses attuned to the faint rustle of leaves and the promise of restful dreams. Let that promise settle around you like a soft shawl and sip once more, letting the herbs do their quiet work. You cradle a slender crystal decanter filled with pale mauve liquid, its surface shimmering like a dawnlit pond, and you're about to become the guest of honor at a ceremony devoted entirely to lavender cordials. You probably won't survive this if you've ever tried to make artisanal syrup in your dorm room at 2 a.m. But tonight, you're stepping into the shoes of a Victorian apothecary, sugar spoon in hand, ready to distill sleep itself. So settle back in that chaise lounge, rest your decanter on the embroidered velvet cushion beside you, and let's sip through the fragrant history of this sweet elixir first. Imagine a lavender field at the edge of Provence, rows of silvery green stalks bowed under fragrant purple blooms. Victorian growers harvested those flower heads at precisely the height of their bloom, believing that a sunrise pick captured the plant's essence of repose. In practice, they clipped the spike just before dew evaporated, gathered it into linen sacks, and delivered it to an apothecary's workshop, where assistants laid it on marble tables to dry. One mainstream historical fact: by 1865, the British pharmacopoeia included Lavender Cordials as an official formula, prescribing 3 ounces of dried lavender to 1 pint of distilled water, then sweetened to taste with 2 pounds of sugar, proof that this concoction was no mere parlor pastime. Now you lean forward as the apothecary's gloved hand dims the lamps, leaving only the moonlight to dance across your syrupy prize. The ceremony begins with a careful infusion. The dried flowers are steeped in boiling spring water for exactly 20 minutes, then cooled in a silver basin filled with crushed ice, lowering the temperature just enough to preserve the volatile oils that carry lavender's signature lull. You might snort at the idea of ice. Victorians didn't have refrigerators. After Albert, they imported ice blocks from Norway, stacking them in insulated vaults lined with straw. Historians still argue whether that icy step reserved more scent compounds or simply functioned as a showy display of wealth. That once the infusion has mellowed, the apothecary strains the liquid through layers of muslin. Imagine 3 sheets, each finer than the last, until every tiny petal fragment vanishes. You watch the pale purple fluid drip-drop into a copper kettle where sugar and honey melt together in a slow simmer. A small porcelain spoon dips into the bubbling mixture, tasting at intervals to ensure the sweetness doesn't overpower the botanical bite. One quirky tidbit: some experimental cordials included a pinch of wormwood or rue, rumored to stir restful visions in the mind, though over-enthusiasts sometimes woke convinced they'd been conversing with their You probably won't try that variant unless you're in the market for midnight philosophical debates with whiskers. Next comes the ceremonial decanting. You observe as the apothecary uses a goose feather quill to fill each bottle without spilling. A single drop, the sort of dexterity that inspires YouTube challenges today. The neck of each vessel is sealed with pink wax stamped with a lavender sprig emblem, then bound with a ribbon of silken thread dyed a matching violet hue. In wealthy homes, these cordials were displayed on silver trays, accompanied by petite porcelain cups etched with pastoral scenes. Guests would raise their cups in a hushed toast, whispering to peaceful slumber, before tipping back the syrup and sighing into their cushions. You lift your cup, noting how the lavender aroma blossoms like a garden breathing deep in the early hours. The first sip is sweet and floral, with a mellow herbaceous aftertaste that tickles the back of your throat. You feel the sugar's warmth in your chest, the honey's softness on your tongue, and a gentle calm unfurls in your limbs. Some Victorians believed that adding a spritz of orange blossom water amplified the cordial's effects, although purists scoffed at this foreign frivolity. Historians still argue whether the addition of citrus blossoms boosted lavender's sedative potential or simply served as a distraction from the era's more dubious tinctures. In certain circles, lavender cordial became a full theatrical performance. You imagine a gaslit parlor, where staff enter silently and dim the main chandelier, leaving only blue-tinged lamps lit. A harpist plays a single drawn-out chord as the apothecary wheels in a small tea trolley, its wheels oiled to whisper rather than clatter. The trolley's bottom shelf holds a bowl of rose petals, while the top displays the dulcet purple bottles cradled in velvet. You might chuckle at the extravagance. You definitely won't survive an actual Victorian soiree without tripping over a petticoat, but for the participants, every detail mattered in the pursuit of exquisite calm. Then there's the aftercare protocol. Once you finish your cordial, servants might escort you to a curtained alcove where a pillow stuffed with extra dried lavender awaits. The pillowcase is linen, hand-embroidered with a sprig motif, and beneath it, a sachet of hops adds another layer of botanical hush. A discreet bell within arm's reach promises a silent call for additional soothing draughts, though by then you're likely floating halfway to dreamland. One fringe practice involves sprinkling a few grains of powdered oyster shell into the cordial, believed to strengthen the body's earthbound anchor, preventing dreams from drifting into nightmares. But many users simply reported a chalky finish. As you lean back, the lavender's familiar perfume mingles with the room's faint musk of velvet and old paper. The cordial's sweetness spreads warmth through your torso, and you notice your breath growing slower, more measured. It's a far cry from the rattling dinner parties and midnight factory whistles you encountered earlier. Here, in your private alcove, the world narrows to the rhythm of your heart and the muted pulse of Lavender's essence. You recall the ice harvested from Norway, the precise muslin filters, the carved ribbon seals, each step a small experiment in sensory suggestion. In a time before antibiotics and modern neurology, Victorians trusted in ceremony as much as chemistry. They believed that the act of preparing and partaking in these cordials was itself half the cure. Historians still argue whether the ritual outweighed the botanicals in efficacy, but tonight, as you feel the cordial's gentle lull, you understand the power of intention. By the time you stand, the cordial's last drops lingering on your tongue, you're ready to glide back to your four-poster bed. You tuck in your lace-trimmed nightcap and let the lavender's echo trail you like a whispered promise. Perhaps you'll slip into those moonlight baths later, or maybe you'll rest here, lulled by memory and scent. Either way, the sweet sip of lavender cordial has etched a moment of stillness into your night, a pocket of calm in a tapestry of elaborate remedies. So hold your cup one more time, breathe in the floral hush, and let that violet warmth settle in your chest. Sleep beckons just beyond the crack of your eyelids, carried on the wings of a lavender-laced lullaby. You slip away from the hush of the lavender-scented alcove and glide through a moonlit corridor draped in silver-grey damask, your slippers whispering against the polished floor. Ahead lies the garden pavilion, its arched windows aglow with pale lunar light that spills onto a marble-lined bath. You probably won't survive the chill if you're faint-hearted, but tonight, you're about to discover why Victorians believed a nocturnal dip under the moon could reset both body and mind. So breathe in the cool night air, feel the scent of jasmine drifting on a gentle breeze, and step onto the mosaic stones that guide you to the water's edge. Victorian social diaries record that by 1872, moonlight bathing societies had sprung up across English country estates, each boasting upwards of 50 members who gathered only on full moon nights. Historians still argue whether these gatherings were driven by genuine belief in lunar healing or simply by the delight of an exclusive after-dark event. The practice drew inspiration from Romantic-era poets who associated moonlight with tranquility and the feminine divine, giving the ritual an air of mystical legitimacy. You descend 3 shallow steps into the bath, the water cool and surprisingly still, reflecting the mint-blue sky above. The Victorians calibrated these temperatures painstakingly, not so cold as to shock the heart, yet cool enough to coax down your core body temperature, which modern science confirms is a key signal to induce sleep. One mainstream historical fact: medical journals of the era recommended 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius as the ideal bath temperature for pre-sleep immersion, citing experiments that showed lowered body heat corresponded with deeper slumber. As the water laps around your calves, you close your eyes and let the moon's silver fingers trace gentle patterns on your upturned face. Below you, a hidden gas jet emits a faint hiss, keeping the water from growing too chilly, while above, white-clad attendants hover in the shadows, ready to offer lavender-scented towels at the slightest shiver. It's a combination of ritual and scientific observation. Water therapy meets ceremonial drama. Scholars still debate whether the moon's gravitational pull played any actual role, or if the perceived lunar influence was nothing more than a placebo framed by elaborate pageantry. Tread deeper until the water reaches your waist, feeling the marble floor's subtle mosaic beneath your toes. A server slips a porcelain mug into your hand, filled with warm barley water infused with mint, the steam rising in miniature clouds against the night sky. The barley's mild sweetness soothes your stomach, just as hydropathists intended, and the mint's tingle tickles your senses. Another layer to this multisensory sleep ritual. In some estates they even flitted sprigs of fresh mint in the water itself, claiming it amplified circulation benefits and eased nervous agitation. A fringe variant of moonlight bathing took place in a circle of standing stones on the outskirts of Glastonbury, where a self-styled night healer named Lady Aveline arranged for participants to bathe under actual moonbeams unlit by gas. You probably won't risk the damp grass and bracing chill outside the pavilion walls, but insiders swore that exposure to direct lunar light, rather than its gaslit approximation, unlocked a deeper somnolence tied to ancient lunar deities. Historians still argue whether such gatherings ever extended beyond a handful of romantic eccentrics, or if they were a convenient cover for late-night revelry. Floating in the pale glow, you sense the night embracing you, the world reduced to water, moon, and your own slowing heartbeat. The marble basin's curved sides cradle you as if you're a pearl nestled in an oyster shell, and the hush of the garden, a symphony of cricket song and distant owl hoots, wraps you in acoustic serenity. Victorian etiquette demanded silence during the soak. Any whisper or giggle risked shattering the communal calm, an irony not lost on those who later shattered champagne glasses in celebration. After 20 minutes timed by attendants armed with large pocket watches, you lift yourself from the bath and let the water cascade off your arms in silver rivulets. You step onto towels rolled in lavender sprigs, a callback to the earlier cordial ceremony, where the same scent soothed your senses. One quirky detail: Some Moonlight bathtubs were fitted with small mechanical arms that gently rocked the water, simulating a mother's lullaby-like sway on a cradle. Devotees said this motion tricked their vestibular systems into drifting off. Though a few reported seasick dizziness instead of drowsiness, your attendant wraps you in a woolen robe lined with rabbit fur. Nod to the fringe practice you encountered in factory dormitories, where workers stitched pelt into their nightcaps. Up here, the fur is meant to lock in warmth, while the wool gently strokes the chilled skin. You can almost feel your pores relaxing, the lingering coolness of the water giving way to comforting heat. Medical treatises of the era praised such wet-dry cycling for improving vascular tone, a refinement of hydropathic theory that modern sleep researchers still reference when discussing thermoregulation and sleep onset. You settle onto a lounge positioned just beyond the bath's rim, feet still curtained by the moonlit water. A small brass bell tinkles discreetly, and a servant appears with a silver tray bearing a pipette of phosphor elixir. Nod to the neurological theories you encountered earlier. A single drop on your tongue, it said, primes the brain's nighttime machinery by supporting nerve cell membranes. You're tempted, but recall how some phosphor blends glowed with radioactive allure, and decide to save that experiment for a bolder night. In the hush, you remember the Lavender Cordials, first sweet swirl, the clamor of London's nocturnal chaos, and the hushed etiquette of aristocratic soaks. Now, Moonlight baths offer a different kind of solace, immersion in both water and myth, each ripple echoing centuries of whispered hopes for rest. You notice how your shoulders have drained of tension and how the night's cool palate extends that relaxation into your very bones. As you rise, the night air kisses your damp skin, and the robing servant secures the fur robe around your shoulders. You step away from the pavilion, leaving behind the perfect union of science, ceremony, and lunar romance. In the privacy of your bedchamber, you'll find your lavender harp pillow waiting, another thread in this tapestry of dreamy rituals. But for now, the world feels hushed. The moon's arc a silent promise that rest is within reach. Historians still argue whether these moonlight dips genuinely altered sleep architecture or if they merely offered a theatrical respite from the everyday grind. Yet here you stand, heartbeats slowed, senses tuned to the nocturnal hush. The velvet nights embrace, coaxing you closer to dream's threshold. You tuck a curl of damp hair behind your ear and pad back through the corridor, each footfall echoing like the last note of a lullaby. Soon, you'll retreat to your four-poster haven, lulled by scents, temperatures, and memories of water's gentle hold. But tonight, at this moonlit bath's edge, you've tasted the alchemy of night, and your body whispers gratitude. Sleep is but a breath away, carried on a ripple of moonlight. You follow the soft glow of a single lantern down a silent corridor, anticipating the next element in our Victorian sleep symphony, nightwear. Imagine sliding into garments as elaborate as your daytime finery, because why should corsets retire? Before you do, you probably won't survive a modern pajama party after tonight, having seen the extremes of Victorian bedtime attire. So inhale the faint scent of beeswax from the lamp, feel the brush of wool and lace on your fingertips, and prepare to explore how restrictive fashions and cozy capes shape the quest for slumber. First, consider the paradox of the night corset. In upper-class households, women sometimes wore especially designed nightstays beneath their nightgowns, lighter, softer versions of daytime corsets intended to offer gentle support. One mainstream historical fact: by 1850, many dressmakers offered two-tiered corsetry systems, stiffer daytime stays and more flexible night stays, believing spinal alignment aided restful breathing. You can almost hear the quiet snap of those fabric-covered bones as you pull the ties snugly around your ribcage. Historians still argue whether the night stays genuinely improved posture and eased respiratory function, or if they merely transferred the discomfort of daytime constriction into the dark. You shimmy into a night corset made of cotton, its laces gliding through brass eyelets like a slow-motion dance. The fabric feels faintly fragrant, a callback to the lavender sachets tucked in wardrobes. As you cinch the laces, your breathing steadies, but you also sense the subtle compression pressing on your solar plexus. Fringe anecdotes tell of daring debutantes who replaced boning with flexible whalebone strips harvested from stranded sea creatures, claiming the inherent oceanic energy induced deeper dreams. You probably won't volunteer for whalebone nightwear unless you're auditioning for a marine-themed sleep pageant, but the idea of tapping into cetacean vibes certainly adds a layer of whimsy. Next, men and women alike donned nightcaps, cloth hoods that trapped warmth around the skull, under the belief that heat lost through the head impeded sleep. Mainstream medical guides of the era recommended nightcaps made of fine flannel or fleece, sometimes lined with rabbit fur for extra insulation. You draw the cap low over your forehead, feeling your ears nestle into plush folds. Historians still debate whether headwear actually conserved enough body heat to measurably affect sleep onset, or if the comfort lay in the snug sensation itself in working-class homes. Nightcaps took simpler forms, patched cotton scraps tied into a rudimentary hood, often reeking faintly of soot from the kitchen hearth. You pinch the brim of your own cap and inhale a ghost of wood smoke, remembering the communal resiliency that transformed ragged scraps into trusted warming gear. Fringe stories mention East End dwellers inserting lemon balm leaves into cap linings, convinced the citrusy aroma would waft directly into their dreams. You probably won't try a lemon balm bonnet unless you fancy hallucinating on the citrus factory floor, but it's testament to how far Victorians would go for cozy head warmth. Then there were the enveloping night robes and wrappers, sometimes called dressing gowns when worn post-bath but equally employed at bedtime. These voluminous gowns, often silk or velvet, draped around shoulders like a royal cloak, creating a microclimate that protected nightwear from drafts. One mainstream historical fact: by the 1870s, gentlemen's smoking jackets of plush velvet doubled as sumptuous night robes once the pipe was put away, merging leisure and sleep rituals. You slip into a burgundy velvet robe, its wide sleeves brushing your calves, and feel instantly ensconced in a protective cocoon. Historians still argue whether the added bulk truly retained heat or simply served as a sartorial status symbol, paraded even in the privacy of sleep. Underneath, nightshirts varied in length and decoration. Aristocratic examples might boast lace-trimmed collars, embroidered cuffs, and delicate mother-of-pearl buttons, each detail inscribed with the household's crest. You button up a nightshirt adorned with tiny crescent moons and stars, noticing the fabric's light rustle like soft confetti. In contrast, laborers' nightshirts were often hand-me-down linen, rough around the edges, patched at elbows, and sometimes frayed at the hem. One quirky tidbit: some coal miners sewed small leather pouches into their nightshirts to carry a pinch of charcoal, believed to absorb bad dreams before they reached the mine's inner chamber. Let's not forget camisoles and pantaloons, undergarments that shielded nightshirts from bodily oils and kept linens fresher through multiple nights. Upper-class women might wear silk camisoles embroidered with hidden pockets to stash a lavender puff or a slip of laudanum-soaked cotton. You slip a sachet into your own faux pockets, smiling at the clandestine nod to clandestine cures. Fringe tailors offered glowing silk pantaloons imbued with phosphorescent powder so wearers could locate each other in moonlit corridors, though more than one household. Cat met a sticky fade chasing glow-in-the-dark pants. You probably won't invest in luminescent night undergarments unless you aim to startle your midnight snack runs, but it highlights the playful ingenuity of the age. By candlelight, every stitch and seam held significance. Victorian etiquette manuals even advised on the correct way to fold nightwear for travel: a lavender sachet atop the stack, a slip of paper with your initials, and a final flourish of ribbon. One mainstream historical fact: railway travelers in first-class compartments were provided with night kits containing a simple nightshirt, cap, and slippers, highlighting how vital consistent bedwear was to maintaining health on long journeys. You imagine yourself tucking away your embroidered night things into a leather kit bag, the faint clink of mother-of-pearl buttons echoing like tiny raindrops as you settle into your sheet-draped four-post. The combined weight of fabric, fragrance, and ritual envelops you. The nightcap presses gently, the night corset supports without suffocating, and the dressing gown lies folded at the foot of the bed, ready for an emergency shiver. You release the final corset lace and feel your ribcage expand, lungs filling with the cool night air filtered through thick drapes. There's a sensation of being wrapped in intention, every garment designed to guard and guide you toward restful oblivion. Historians still argue whether these elaborate garments were medically sound or socially performative, an indulgence for those with means, while the working poor made do with little more than a patched blanket. Yet regardless of class, bedtime clothes served as a boundary between the day's anxieties and the sanctuary of night. You can almost hear the rustle of petticoats and the soft murmur of hopes for peaceful sleep. So smooth the fabric of your nightshirt, adjust the brim of your cap, and let each layer of Victorian costume lull you further from wakefulness. In a world without fleece pajamas or heated blankets, Victorians wove warmth, scent, and ceremony into their bedtime attire, trusting every ruffle and ribbon to usher them toward dreams. You probably won't recreate a full ensemble tonight unless you're hosting a steampunk sleepover, but you can still appreciate the care and craft behind every stitch as your eyelashes grow heavy. Recall the lavender sachets nestled in your cap and the gentle support of your nightstays. Feel the soft press of velvet against your skin, and know that for centuries, humanity has clothed itself in comfort to face the dark. Now, surrender to the tactile hush. Let the nightwear do its quiet work and drift away wrapped in layers of Victorian intent. You creep back into your chamber, where the hush of velvet-draped walls greets you like an old friend, and you realize bedtime in the Victorian era was as much about architecture as it was about potions. Imagine stepping over a thick, patterned carpet that swallows the sound of your slippers, then pausing before a heavy damask curtain that falls from ceiling to floor. Your personal curtain call between the clamor outside and the calm within. You probably won't survive this if you think your IKEA blackout curtains do the trick. But tonight, you're discovering how Victorians built sanctuaries designed to hush both noise and prying eyes. So lean back against a bolster pillow, run your fingers along the tasseled trim, and let's tour these soundproof havens where decor became cure. First, consider the walls themselves. In grand houses, walls were often lined with horsehair plaster, covered in rich brocade wallpaper, every thread chosen to muffle echoes of servants' footsteps in the corridor. One mainstream historical fact: by 1862, treatises on interior design recommended at least 3 layers of wallpaper backing to deaden sound, effectively creating a low-tech acoustic panel long before modern studios existed. You can almost feel the weight of those layers pressing in around you, cocooning your bed in cozy silence. Historians still argue whether the expense was justified by genuine sonic improvement, or if it was more a display of wealth and taste. Above your 4-poster bed, the canopy, once a sign of status, served a second purpose: to hold thick curtains that enclosed you in a tent-like nook. Draw the side curtains closed and the world outside snuffs out like a candle's flame, leaving only your private pocket of moonlight peeking through a small gap. A fringe tidbit tells of eccentric hosts who sewed corkboard panels into their bed canopies, claiming the air pocket trapped malignant whispers from nosy neighbors. You probably won't volunteer to sleep in a cork-lined tent unless you're auditioning for a quirky sleep experiment. But it shows how far Victorians would go to keep their secrets safe. Floor-length draperies didn't end at windows. Portiere curtains hung in doorways blocked drafts and stifled hallway gossip in one fell swoop. Some houses even trained servants to pull rope-operated portieres at night, so you'd never hear the clink of a chamber pot or the soft squeak of a nightingale in the aviary outside. In working-class homes, renters improvised with bedsheets and patched quilts, layering fabric to plug gaps around doors. Historians still argue whether these makeshift masks truly reduced nighttime disturbances or if they simply gave exhausted sleepers one more ritual to perform before climbing into bed. Gaze downward at that massive crimson rug underfoot. Victorian carpets were as thick as a forest floor, sometimes up to half an inch in pile, and footmen spent hours brushing them to fluff each knot. You pad across it and notice how the pattern's more floral medallions, often interspersed with lavender sprigs, back to the scent in your pillow, a reminder of how decor and aromatics intertwined. One quirky detail: some decorators embedded small bells into the carpet backing, meant to jingle if a mouse scurried by, alerting residents to critter intrusions. Given your drooping eyelids, you probably won't survive the thrill of a nocturnal rodent alert. But it's proof that no Victorian bedroom was ever truly silent. Windows posed a unique challenge. The ubiquitous sash windows rattled in their frames whenever the wind kicked up. To combat this, wealthy households installed storm shutters lined with felt and wool layers that absorbed drafts and sound. Some resourceful cottagers even jammed cork stoppers into sash rails or stuffed curtains with wool pelts for extra insulation. Scholars still debate whether such measures significantly improved sleep quality or if the perception of security played a larger role in helping the mind relax. The room's centerpiece, your 4-poster bed, sat upon a raised dais in many gentry homes. This elevation kept sleepers above cold air pooling at floor level, but it also allowed for hidden drawers beneath the bed, secret compartments where owners stashed lavender sachets, slip of laudanum-soaked cotton, or a small wax cylinder recording, a lullaby for use in mechanical playback devices. One mainstream historical fact: by 1885, several patent offices registered sleep chest designs combining drawer storage with integrated cedar wood panels to repel moths and damp, revealing the multi-purpose nature of bedroom furniture. Lighting played a crucial role in setting the mood. Gas lamps, though revolutionary, flickered and hissed, so designers often hid them behind frosted glass globes etched with pastoral scenes, generating a soft, even glow. In some experimental circles, inventors rigged simple shutters to lower over the lamp once you prepared to sleep, blocking both light and sound from the hallway, while a small peephole ensured you could summon a servant with a discreet handbell. Fringe enthusiasts swore this gaslight shutter reduced mental agitation by preventing glimpses of unexpected movement, though skeptics noted the risk of bumping into furniture. Shelves and alcoves displayed more than porcelain figurines and family portraits. They held somniferous curiosities like miniature water globes, scented sachets, and collections of smooth river stones believed to store moonlight. Victorian collectors boasted cabinets of curiosities right by their beds, each object chosen for its tactile or aromatic property, objects you'd touch or sniff in moments of restlessness. You probably won't curate your own sleep cabinet unless you're an extreme hobbyist, but you can appreciate how these items created a multi-sensory haven. Let's talk about curtains lining your canopy and windows. The fabrics ranged from India cotton in modest homes to brocade damask imported from France for the nobility. These textiles not only blocked sightlines but also absorbed airborne sounds, from horse hooves on cobblestones to the distant rumble of steam engines. Some designers even stitched pockets of aromatic herbs, lavender, hops, and rosemary curtain folds, ensuring each breeze released a soporific waft. Historians still argue whether scent-infused drapes contributed materially to sleep onset or if their benefits lay mostly in ritual and symbolism. behind door panels, hid one last trick. Decorative wooden dado rails often concealed rows of densely packed sand or cinder blocks, a primitive form of mass-loaded barrier to further muffle bass frequencies. You might think this extreme even absurd, but in an age before drywall and fiberglass insulation, Victorians wielded whatever materials they could to chase quiet. One quirky account details a London solicitor who fitted his entire bedroom floor with a layer of cork granules to deaden racket from neighbors. Children, another testament to the lengths gone for a few hours of undisturbed rest. Now, settle back onto the plush bed. Feel the embrace of heavy linens layered over your body. And note how every element from horsehair walls to sand-lined rails conspired to create a cocoon of calm. The gaslight's glow dims as the portiere swings shut behind you, leaving only the gentle hiss of the lamp and the faint scent of lavender dancing in the air. You recall the nightcaps, the moonlit bath, the lavender cordial, and the squeeze of your corset, each remedy woven into this beautifully orchestrated space. Tonight, your sanctuary stands as proof that for Victorians, decor was a sleeping pill in its own right, a delicate balance of science, superstition, and style. As you trace the braided fringe of your bolster pillow with your fingertips, your breathing slows, syncing with the room's hushed rhythm. You're wrapped in layers of intent architectural, botanical, and social that cradle you toward dreams. So turn the key in the lamp, tuck the final drape over your canopy, and let the silence settle like a warm blanket. In this chamber, even the walls participate in lulling you to sleep, and you probably won't wake to the clamor of gaslit streets again, at least not until morning. You slip from your canopy-draped haven toward a polished mahogany washstand, where a servant balances a pewter bucket brimming with ice-cold water so frosty it mists in the lamplight. You probably won't survive this ritual if you're prone to warmth. Modern heated blankets be damned, but tonight, you're diving headfirst or ankle-first into Victorian cold water therapy. So sit at the edge of that silk-covered stool, rest your feet on the low footstool, and prepare to discover why Victorians believed a deliberate shock to the system could whisk you into peaceful slumber. First, imagine the hydropathic manuals lining doctors' offices in the 1860s, each prescribing a fusion at precisely 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 15.5 degrees Celsius. One mainstream historical fact: by 1878, hydropathists recommended applying cold water to the ankles for 2 to 3 minutes before bedtime, claiming the resulting vasoconstriction redirected blood away from the brain, thus quelling racing thoughts and promoting rest. You feel the servant's gloved hand tip the bucket, dazzling droplets splashing onto your stockings with a hiss. Historians still argue whether this vascular theory held any physiological merit, or simply served as a brisk placebo that left patients too chilled to hustle again. You dip one foot into the icy bath, a gasp escaping your lips as the cold bites through silk. Then the second foot follows, and you shiver so hard the servant fetches a lamb's wool foot warmer, half treatment, half consolation prize. Fringe enthusiasts took this further. Merlin's bucket, they called it, a trough filled with water drawn from glacier-fed streams, said to carry ancient alpine energies directly into your veins. You probably won't volunteer for a trip to the Alps at midnight, but imagine the bragging rights of claiming your insomnia cure was literally sourced from melting ice caps. Once your ankles tingle like pins and needles, a towel appears, spun from cooled flannel and scented faintly with lavender, a callback to the cordial ceremony you indulged in earlier. You pat your legs briskly, the combination of cold and coarse fabric turning your skin rosy, like boiled lobster. Some practitioners recommended a quick reverse douche. Once the ankles warmed, servants would pour tepid water over your arms to balance the temperature shock. Scholars still debate whether this hot-cold contrast genuinely facilitated the transition to sleep or merely conditioned sufferers to dread their nightly ablutions. But why stop at ankles? In certain spas, full-body wet sheet packs awaited. You'd be wrapped in cold, wet linen sheets and then swathed in dry blankets, encouraged to endure the chill until body heat warmed the linens. Fringe nocturnal shock clinics even invited patrons to lie wrapped in ice-cold blankets under open windows. Think alpine igloo cosplay meets bedtime. You probably won't survive a night in an icy cocoon, but some devotees claimed they emerged so relaxed it felt like their bones had forgotten how to tremble. In your chamber, though the focus narrows to head and face, a small ewer of icy water stands ready for the slush cap. A quick pour over the temples and forehead. The servant lifts your nightcap, replacing it temporarily with a soaked cotton cap, wrung out until icicles threaten to drip. You breathe in sharply as the cold descends, the world narrowing to a pinprick of sensation. One quirky tidbit: some practitioners added a drop of camphor oil to the slush water, intending to clear the mind's fog, though a few sleep seekers later reported dreams filled with marching peppermint soldiers. Between shocks, you wrap yourself in a robe and recline on a chaise. A small tray arrives with a cup of warm barley water, its sweetness clinging like a soft lullaby to your tongue. If you survive the shock therapy without contracting hypothermia, the theory goes, your nerves will settle like pebbles dropping gently in clear water. You might chuckle at the image modern insomnia apps rarely encourage you to hang your head out the window at 2 a.m. Victorians were nothing if not dramatic in their quest for rest. In industrial towns, laborers improvised similar shock treatments. One fringe anecdote tells of coal miners dipping their boots into icy canal towpaths on the way home, convinced the chill would flush soot from their pores and fatigue from their minds. Historians still argue whether such folk remedies had any real effect or served as community rituals, a way for exhausted workers to share stories and laughter as they dared each other to endure the cold. Back at the washstand, the servant offers a final sponging of rosewater and vinegar, meant to soothe any lingering goosebumps. You close your eyes, inhaling the tangy bouquet, and marvel at how the world tilts from frantic to muted in the span of a single ritual. Yet hydropathists could against overindulgence. Too much cold could trigger insomnia instead of curing it, as the body fought to conserve heat rather than drift off. Scholars still debate whether the net effect of these therapies was sedation or hypervigilance from repeated shocks. Now you settle into your bed with a thick woolen blanket layered atop your linen sheets. You feel the residual chill in your limbs, a persistent nip that reminds you of each dipping and dousing. Oddly enough, that faint shiver might be the true cure, a final dance of temperature that convinces your body the day is done, leaving only the quiet hum of your own breath to fill the room. Look around at the familiar comforts: the lavender pillow beside your head, the silver decanter of cordial on the nightstand, the memory of moonlit baths echoing in your mind. Or, these rituals, hot and cold, sweet and austere, came together in a grand Victorian experiment in rest. You probably won't combine lavender cordials with glacier water dips every evening, but there's something comforting in knowing sleep was once treated as a dramatic theatrical production, that your eyelids grow heavy. Consider the sonic hush you engineered earlier with portieres and linen wool layers. Now, your cooling body lies cocooned beneath blankets, and the final act of this temperature play unfolds as dream lullabies replace the shock of frigid water. Historians still argue whether cold therapy-induced vasoconstriction genuinely promotes REM cycles, or if the effect was purely psychological, a matter of "I endured the ice, therefore I deserve sleep." You draw the wool blanket up to your chin, feeling its warmth envelope the lingering chill. In this moment, the sponging and dipping fade into memory, leaving only drowsy heaviness. Sleep beckons like the final curtain call on a grand performance, and you let yourself fall, carried on the tiny shocks that brought your body to rest. You curl beneath your layered quilts, the lingering whisper of cold water therapy still humming in your veins, and turn your gaze to the small, amber glass vial perched on the nightstand. Inside lies laudanum, a potent opium tincture. Victorians treated both as miracle cure and whispered threat. You probably won't survive mixing sleep elixirs in your bathroom sink, but tonight you'll learn why Victorians counted laudanum among their most trusted lulling legacies. So lift that vial gingerly, inhale its bracing scent of vinegar and opium, and brace yourself for a dive into an intoxicating world where one drop promised heaven and a few more. Oblivion. By the mid-19th century, laudanum was a fixture in nearly every household's medicine cabinet. One mainstream historical fact: Thomas Sydenham first popularized opium-based deodorized laudanum in the late 1600s, and by 1850, commercial laudanum recipes combined 1 part opium to 10 parts alcohol, sweetened with saffron or cinnamon, to mask bitterness. Sold by apothecaries under names like Godfrey's Cordial and Dolby's Magical Mixture, laudanum became shorthand for any opiate tincture promising relief from pain, insomnia, and female complaints. Historians still argue whether its widespread use reflected genuine medical insight or a societal reliance on chemical escape routes. You unscrew the cork and tip a single dropperful into a slender porcelain spoon. The liquid's opacity hints at bound morphine and codeine molecules suspended in alcohol. You hold the spoon aloft, watching the moonlight catch its golden hue before tipping it to your lips. The first sensation is warmth spreading across your tongue, a sweet burn that blossoms into a gentle fade at the edges of your consciousness. For many Victorians, that warmth was the difference between a fitful night and deep, opiate-induced sleep. Yet laudanum's power cut both ways. In prescribed doses, often 2 to 5 drops for children, 10 to 24 adults, it could ease coughs, quell diarrhea, and hush restless minds. But the line between remedy and poison was dangerously thin. Fringe narratives tell of socialites dosing their servants with laudanum-laced lemonade to keep the corridors hushed. A drop more and the servant slumped into a stupor rather than a nap. Scholars still debate whether reports of accidental overdoses in those servant quarters were urban legend or grim reality. You let your head rest on the lavender sachet beneath your pillow and feel your heart slow. In the hushed minutes before sleep overtakes you, you might catch yourself wondering how a single tincture came to carry so much power. Medical journals waxed poetic about laudanum's noble opium properties, crediting its ability to synchronize brain rhythms with the body's own ebb and flow. Yet critics, including early temperance advocates, warned that its ubiquity fostered dependency and moral decay, an accusation echoed by Victorian novels depicting tragic mothers dozing on nursery floors in privileged households. A tiny laudanum kit accompanied evening starching boards, a graduated pipette, small amber vials, and printed dosage guides reminding users a single grain of morphine equaled a powerful nightcap. You envision a dandy in a satin dressing gown, measuring out his nightly tincture by moonlight, his powdered wig askew, and then sliding into opium dreams where London's soot-streaked streets vanished into glittering opal skies. Historians still argue whether laudanum's sedative properties genuinely improved sleep architecture, or if the vivid, often hallucinatory dreams counted as sleep at all. More than mere sleep aid, laudanum featured in countless Victorian health treatises. The opium tincture, wrote one physician in 1873, soothes the nerve centers and bathes the mind in a twilight state conducive to restorative rest. Yet fringe critics whispered of opium graves, where weary souls too reliant on nightly doses never awakened. Coroner's logs from 1885 note dozens of inquests where laudanum overdoses were chalked up to accidental slumber, a euphemism for waking in eternity. You probably won't survive a miscalculation tonight, but that knowledge brings a sober edge to every drop. The social stigma around laudanum fluctuated. In bohemian salons it was treated like an artistic muse, fueling poets' fevered visions and lending a dreamy haze to artists' sketches. One quirky tidbit: some estiates crafted opium trays, decorative boxes containing laudanum vials alongside rosewater, poppy pods, and velvet stoppers presented like smoking sets at late-night gatherings. Participants would take turns, dosing small sips while reciting Baudelaire translations, convinced the tincture sharpened sensibilities even as it dulled the senses. Historians still debate whether these taste tests ever transcended performative ritual or simply fueled morbidity. In rural cottages, far from city apothecaries, homemade laudanum thrived. A granny might macerate poppy heads in brandy, strain the liquid through a linen cloth, and sweeten it with honey. One fringe account describes a Welsh healer adding a handful of woodland mushrooms believed to synergize with opiates, though modern toxicologists cringe at the potential for lethal combinations. Scholars still argue whether such folk variations ever matched the potency of commercial tinctures or were more akin to placebo folk remedies. Your breathing deepens as you slip into that twilight state, neither fully awake nor completely asleep, suspended on the opiate edge of consciousness. You notice your limbs loosen, your eyelids feel leaden, and the world's outlines blur into soft focus. Yet part of you remains aware that this chemical embrace demands respect and precise measurement. You might recall the servant's hidden spoon, the whispered warnings in temperance tracts, and the coroner's somber reports, all swirling in a dance of relief and risk. Veterinary manuals even documented laudanum's use in calming fractious horses before carriage journeys, that its sedative reach extended beyond human anxieties. You chuckle at the idea of a pampered mare dozing at the stable wall after a drop of opium, unaware that both horse and rider faced the same delicate balance between tranquility and peril. Historians still argue whether veterinary opiate use informed human medical practices, or if it simply reflected a wider cultural embrace of chemical pacifiers. You feel the tincture's final notes, a velvet hush on your nerves, a distant echo of coughs subdued, and a gentle exhalation as your consciousness tips toward sleep. Soon you'll join the countless Victorians who surrendered to laudanum's lures, trusting its bittersweet legacy to ferry them through the silent hours. Some awoke refreshed, others never awoke at all, an ambivalence that hovered over every apothecary's counter-doubt as the amber glow of your lamp flickers lower. You set the vial aside, its contents diminished but its memory potent. You've walked a line between healing and hazard, tasted both promise and peril in that single spoonful. Sleep awaits on the other side of caution, and tonight, guided by lavender-scented dreams and the ghost of opiate lullabies, you cross that boundary with measured steps. You stir beneath your quilt as the soft hiss of the gas lamp mingles with the ghost of cold water shocks still tingling in your limbs, and you realize that light itself became both a comfort and a curse for the sleepless victorious. You probably won't survive a modern all-night coding session without blue light filters, but tonight we're rewiring your mind for an era when gas jets and early electric bulbs waged skirmishes over your circadian calm. So lean up, squint through drowsy eyes at the lamp's dancing flame, and let's explore how Victorian lighting shaped insomnia long before fluorescent screens existed. By the mid-19th century, gaslight reigned supreme, soft flickering flames fed by coal-derived gas that lent parlors a warm amber glow. One mainstream historical fact: in 1854 London, over 30,000 street lamps burned gas each night, while wealthier homes installed elaborate gasoliers in dining rooms and bedrooms, complete with adjustable valves to modulate brightness. You can almost feel the heat of those jets puffing overhead, the sway of the flame creating hypnotic shadows on floral wallpaper. Historians still argue whether the lamp's gentle flicker soothed anxious nerves or only lulled sufferers into a state of agitated half-sleep. Some Victorians embraced the steadier promise of electricity when Edison's incandescent bulb emerged. In 1879, early adopters, mostly the ultra-wealthy, wired their drawing rooms and began installing porcelain sockets in bedrooms, marveling at the electric light's unwavering white beam. One quirky tidbit: a few flamboyant hosts replaced gas globes with electric bulbs fitted into hollowed-out goose eggs, believing the organic shell softened the glare into a natural lunar glow. You probably won't try a goose egg lamp tonight, unless you fancy hampering your own circadian rhythm further. But it's an illuminating testament to Victorian inventiveness. The scientific debate roiled beneath these innovations. Gaslight's warm hue mirrored candlelight and, in theory, signaled day's end to your nerves, while electric light's brilliance seemed to awaken circuits better left dormant. Physicians warned that electric bulbs emitted exciting rays that overstimulated the retina, delaying the body's readiness for rest. You traced the braided lamp cord at your bedside, pondering how Victorians experimented dim valve here, bonfire setting there, hoping to strike the right luminous balance. Scholars still debate whether the perceived insomnia spike attributed to gaslight was actually due to pollutants in the gas making people restless, or if the clean electric glow truly appended the body's natural winding down process. In parlors, families gathered under low-watt gas fixtures, sipping lavender cordial or the stronger barley-based nightcaps, each hopeful that the warm amber would lull them toward dreams. Meanwhile, the pioneering electric salons flickered with stark white light, hosting soirees that stretched past midnight. Cruel irony for any neurasthenic soul. You might chuckle at the thought of your great-grandparents live-tweeting their electric parlor jokes. But in reality, these gatherings often turned into accidental sleep deprivation tests. Fringe enthusiasts even timed how long they could tolerate white incandescent glare before succumbing to yawns, a Victorian version of today's blue light challenge. You probably won't live-stream your own eye strain trials, but imagine the yawn counts as the evening deepened. Some homes employed tinted shades, amber or rose-colored glass panels to simulate gaslight on electric fixtures. Designers claimed these filters restored the soul's evening glow, softening harsh white photons into restful rays. One mainstream historical fact: by 1892, patent filings listed dozens of tinted lamp attachments marketed as Somnolox or Dreamship, each promising to preserve a healthy sleep cycle. You lean closer, picturing a catalog of names so earnest they'd make a wellness blogger blush. Historians still argue whether tinted glass genuinely altered the light spectrum enough to impact sleep hormones, or if the effect was purely such fancy placebo effect dressed in colored glass. In rural cottages where electricity crept in slowly, gaslight remained king, but its maintenance demanded attentiveness. Leaking valves could poison a room with carbon monoxide, while sputtering jets startled sleepers into jolts of adrenaline. You remember that galvanic buzz from Section 4 and realize that light itself delivered sensations more visceral than any contraption. Fringe safety manuals recommended building miniature light cloaks, hooded lampshades that directed the beam away from the eyes entirely, leaving only ambient glow to fill the room. You probably won't don a lampshade helmet tonight. But the plight of the light-sensitive Victorian is not so different from yours lamenting lead glare on a Sunday morning. Meanwhile, electric lighting pioneers touted nighttime productivity, typewriters clacking in study nooks long after gaslit salons fell silent. But factory workers, accustomed to industrial gas flames and workshops, found their night shift even more punishing under bright electric arc lights. The stark contrast between bright bulbs and pitch-dark breaks left many so disoriented they suffered chronic insomnia, prompting hydropathists to prescribe evening oil bath goggles, leather masks with narrow slits that filtered bright light in preparation for rest. One quirky tidbit: some experimenters embedded tiny prisms into these goggles so wearers could watch rainbows drift across their vision as they walked to bed, though more than one patient reported hallucinating neon butterfly wings. On a moonlit night, you might recall the serene calm of a moonlight bath from Section 7, true lunar light, untouched by flame or electron. You felt no flicker, no shock, just silver whispers brushing your skin. Contrast that with the constant glow of a gas, jet or electric filament, each pulse and photon a subtle nudge to your nervous system. Historians still argue whether exposure to natural moonlight truly resets circadian rhythms better than any man-made glow, or if that belief was simply romantic propaganda pushed by poets seeking nocturnal inspiration. Outside your window, you see street lamps dripping amber pools onto wet cobblestones, gaslight giving way. Block by block, two electric beacons that cut swaths of white through the fog. Midnight carriage drivers mutter about the new devil's glow that keeps passengers awake, while insomniac aristocrats debate whether to let in moonlight through the window or seal it out in favor of electric hush. You press your fingers to the glass, wishing for the soothing lantern hum of Section 2's soundproofed streets. But here, light and noise collide in an ongoing battle for your slumber. Back in your bedroom, you close the drapes over the window, sealing out both gas and electric invasions. You dim your bedside lamp to its lowest flicker, mixing lavender sachet aromas with the warm pulse of lamplight. The electric bulb above you dims into a silent whisper, or at least it glows faintly enough that you can't read your last diary entry. You're left with a delicate dance of shadows, each one a memory of past remedies. The crackle of the hydropathic jet, the swirl of lavender cordial, the hush of velvet walls, the snap of night corset laces. These lights, gas, electric, and lunar, intertwined into your final ritual, choosing which glow will bid you goodnight as your eyelids flutter. Consider how each beam shaped not only Victorian nights but the very concept of rest. Some clung to the flickering romance of gaslight. Others embraced the steady promise of electric bulbs, each seeking an elusive key to shut down their busy minds. Scholars still debate whether the bulb's brilliance rewired our sleep patterns forever, or if it merely illuminated the age-old struggle against wakefulness. So, turn your valve just a hair, or click off the socket if you dare, and let dark, or channeled through tinted glass, finally claim you. In the interplay of flame and filament, you've discovered that light can be both a balm and a burden. Now, let the last golden spark fade, and drift off into the velvet hush of your own making. You slip through a half-open door into a dimly lit workshop, the air faintly scented with oiled gears and sandalwood polish, and you realize the Victorians approached sleep like engineers tackling a stubborn machine. You probably won't survive a night in these contraptions without a crash helmet, but tonight, you're the test subject for mechanical sleep aids that promised engineered rest. So, swing your legs over the edge of a gently rocking contraption. Feel the rhythmic click of cogwheels behind you, and prepare to explore how gears and levers vied with lullabies and lavender in the quest for slumber. First, consider the revolutionary rocking bed. It looks like a four-poster on casters, but beneath its frame hides a hidden mechanism. A delicate series of clockwork springs and weighted pendulums that sway the mattress at exactly 20 revolutions per minute, fast enough to coax drowsiness, slow enough to avoid seasickness. One mainstream historical fact. By 1892, at least 3 patented designs for automatic bed rockers appeared in the British Patent Office, each claiming to reproduce the comforting motion of a carriage ride or a mother's cradle. You settle into the soft mattress and feel its gentle sway, as if you're drifting down a silent river, even as the polished brass gears click methodically beneath you. Historians still argue whether this engineered motion genuinely synced with human vestibular systems, or if the novelty alone lulled patients into submission. Beside the rocking bed stands the Somnipod, a more ambitious contraption resembling a small cabinet on stilts. You peek inside and discover a padded interior, where you can recline with nothing but your head peeking out through a circular portal. Once inside, an attendant turns a crank, causing the entire pod to rotate on a gimbaled axis, imitating the gentle roll of a ship at anchor. Fringe practitioners claim this motion entrained the mind to a hypnotic frequency, pulling thoughts away from insomnia's grip. You probably won't volunteer for a full rotation, but as the Somnipod begins its slow spin, vision blurs into a soft tunnel of light, and you sense your muscles loosen as if weight itself has ceded control. Next up is the Lavender, a mechanical armature attached to a cushioned headrest. It's designed to tap ever so lightly on your temples at precisely 1-second intervals, an echo of modern transcranial rhythmic stimulation, albeit far less refined. People lined up to try the Lullatron, convinced that a tiny percussive massage would quiet brain chatter. One quirky tidbit: a few inventors rigged their versions to double as an alarm clock, so if you failed to drift off within 30 minutes, the taps would morph into an urgent knock, jolting you sharply awake as a form of reverse therapy. Historians still argue whether tapping rhythms influenced neural oscillations or simply served as a placebo that distracted an overactive mind. Not to be outdone, the Somnambulator promises a full suite of mechanical comforts. It combines the rocking bed's motion with an overhead track on which a small lantern swings like a pendulum, its light tracing arcs on the ceiling to mimic a slow, breathing glow. A tub of warm water at the foot of the bed releases gentle steam when a timer signal clicks, filling the nook with moist warmth. You slide onto the mattress, noticing how the chamber's environment shifts seamlessly. Light dims. Motion begins. Steam drifts up in wispy clouds. Yet fringe manuals warn that overuse could lead to machine dependency, where users slept only when cogs turned, a testament to the mechanical mania gripping some corners of Victorian health culture. In more modest homes, simpler devices appeared. Rocking chairs fitted with tension-adjustable springs under the seat, designed to cradle the sitter into a mild rocking. You fold your legs over the armrests and feel the chair begin its subtle sway, less dramatic than the full bed, but enough to hush the spine's micro-movements. One mainstream historical fact: by the 1880s, London furniture makers offered sleep recliners marketed specifically for insomnia sufferers, boasting sales figures in the thousands. You recline, noticing how the backrest tilts just enough to support your neck, and you imagine highway coaches rocking weary travelers to sleep on long journeys. Scholars still debate whether these passive recliners truly enhanced rest, or if they merely capitalized on the era's gadget craze. You shuffle onto the Dream Engine, a tabletop device about the size of a shoebox. Its front panel features a small window revealing a rotating diorama, a miniature pastoral scene bathed in lantern light with tiny windmills turning at a hypnotic pace. A set of ivory keys on the side lets you control the speed of rotation and the volume of a built-in music box tuned to lullabies. You wind the crank, watch the mill's blades shimmer, and hear a tinkling melody that feels oddly timeless. Fringe enthusiasts claim that focusing on the diorama's movement induced a trance state, bridging the gap between wakefulness and sleep. Historians still argue whether visual entrainment like this influenced theta brainwave emergence or simply echoed age-old practices of staring at campfire flames. In one corner, an ambitious sleep chair catches your eye. It resembles an oversized ducal throne, upholstered in velvet and fitted with a back that reclines at custom angles. Hidden within the armrests are dials for adjusting a footrest that rises and lowers, and levers that control a subtle vibration. Beneath the cushion, you press a lever, and the chair hums to life, its fine tremor akin to a purring cat. The vibration spreads through your body, coaxing each muscle to release tension. One quirky tidbit: some users attached small aromatic oil diffusers to the armrests, releasing bursts of eucalyptus or frankincense in timed intervals, creating a multi-sensory machine lull. Scholars still debate whether combining mechanical motion with scent truly amplified sedation, or if users simply appreciated the novelty. You notice the price tags on these contraptions, princely sums that place them beyond the reach of most. In contrast, enterprising tinkerers sold DIY kits for the bed bouncer, a set of metal coils and fittings you could retrofit to any existing four-poster frame, promising similar rocking action without the custom carpentry. Anecdotes tell of East End carpenters assembling kits late at night by candlelight, eager to test the gadget on exhausted dock workers. Historians still argue whether these grassroots sleep machines democratized mechanized rest or if they were short-lived fads washed away by better remedies. Between each demonstration, you lean back and marvel at how the Victorians treated sleep like an engineering problem, not merely a biological necessity, but a puzzle to be solved with precise craftsmanship. You recall the Lavender Cordials, Moonlight baths, and galvanic shocks from earlier sections, each a different branch on the same tree of experimentation. Now, the mechanical contraptions add a new dimension: motion, light, sound, and even steam choreographed to lull you toward unconsciousness. As you exit the workshop, the gentle click of a closing latch snaps you back to reality. You feel a residual drift in your gait, as if the cogs still turn in your mind. In your bedchamber, away from the mechanical symphony, the silence seems strangely vibrant, like a machine that shut down and left you buzzing in its absence. Yet part of you longs to return to that workshop, to surrender to the programmed, rocking and ticking lullabies once more. Historians still argue whether these mechanical sleep aids genuinely improved sleep quality or if they were simply elaborate gadgets catering to a restless elite. But as you crawl between your lavender-scented sheets, you carry with you a spark of that mechanical ambition, a curiosity that engineers and insomniacs alike shared centuries ago. So close your eyes, imagine the slow turn of tiny gears beneath your pillow, and let the memory of those contraptions rock you into the deepest slumber. Sleep, after all, can be engineered if you trust the cogs. You settle back on your lavender-strewn pillow, still humming from the mechanical cogs and gears of that sleep workshop. And you realize that Victorians didn't stop at concoctions and contraptions, they summoned entire soundscapes to hush the mind. Imagine closing your eyes to the soft crackle of a gramophone spinning a lullaby, while hidden behind the drapes, whispering mantras drift in from a seance chamber. You probably won't survive comparing your Spotify playlists to these antique audio experiments, but tonight you're plunging into the hush of Victorian lullabies, mantras, and curated soundscapes. So draw the canopy curtains tight, let your ears drink in the silence before the performance, and prepare to be serenaded into slumber. First, consider the marvel of the phonograph. Edison patented his revolutionary device in 1877, and by the mid-1880s, a handful of affluent households boasted music machines in their drawing rooms. One mainstream historical fact: by 1890, the Edison Phonograph Company reported sales of over 5,000 home machines in Britain, many marketed with sleep records featuring gentle cradle songs and instrumental hushes. You pictured the machine's brass horn perched atop a mahogany pedestal as a warm cylinder spins, whispering rockabye baby in a tinny reverberant echo that somehow feels comforting rather than eerie. Historians still argue whether these early recordings soothed anxious sleepers or whether the static and hiss jolted minds awake, drawn to decipher every scratch and pop. But Victorians longed for more than mechanical music. Enter the parlor mantra, short, whispered phrases repeated softly to still the chatter of the nerves. Some experimental therapists adopted pseudo-oriental practices, borrowing from books on Hindu meditation that had begun trickling into London bookshops. You lie supine and hear a servant quietly repeat Om Shanti in a hushed tone, the syllables rolling like distant waves. One quirky tidbit: fringe practitioners sometimes recorded these whispered mantras onto wax cylinders mixed with botanical infusion, cinnamon oil and musk to create scented sound, so listening also meant inhaling the aroma. You probably won't spray cinnamon oil into your earbuds tonight, but the idea of multi-sensory mantras underscores the era's all-in approach to rest. In grand estates, composers even wrote bespoke lullabies to order. Lady Ashford commissioned a local organist to craft a nocturne for tender slumber, featuring alternating passages for music box chimes and harp glissandi, meant to mimic moonlight ripples on water. A small clockwork music box would accompany the phonograph, its tines chiming a simple melody at 20-second intervals, exactly the tempo believed to align with the human heart at rest. One mainstream historical fact: by 1888, Queen Victoria herself received a custom mechanical lullaby from Swiss artisans, an ornate cylinder box that played a soothing chorale whenever the canopy tassel was pulled. Scholars still debate whether these personalized compositions genuinely improved sleep depth or functioned more as status symbols that comforted the elite. For the working poor who couldn't afford phonographs or private organists, soundscapes took a humbler form. You might hear peddlers selling soothing shells, large seashells hollowed and polished, held to the ear like a conch to catch the whisper of distant waves artificially pumped by bellows. Some tenement dwellers rubbed these shells between their palms, creating a gentle whoosh that evoked seaside nights free of factory whistles. Fringe urban legends claim that certain street preachers added iron filings and magnets into shell interiors, believing their magneto-acoustic effect could realign frazzled nerves. Historians still argue whether these makeshifts offered genuine acoustic comfort or if they simply distracted the imagination. Not all sound cure came through devices. In wellness spas, professional lullaby singers often trained at the Royal Academy of Music would glide from room to room at dusk, singing soft contralto arias drawn from folk tunes. You might hear a rendition of the old ballad Drowsy Maggie, drifting through the corridors, each phrase stretched and elongated to draw out the melody's soothing cadence. Some singers incorporated lullaby variations on Handel's arias, believing the Baroque ornamentation carried therapeutic harmonics. One quirky detail: in some spas, singers dipped their gloves in lavender oil, so each hand gesture released a fragrant puff as they performed. You probably won't hire a contralto for your next bedtime playlist, but you can appreciate the fusion of voice, scent, and ritual. Then there were the piped-in fountains indoor sound gardens where gently flowing water echoed through marble channels into bedrooms. A small gas-powered pump circulated water at a whispering trickle, its sound piped through brass tubes into hidden grills behind the headboard. You hear the soft plash of water, as if a miniature brook courses through your room, blurring the boundary between nature and architecture. Mainstream hydropathic guides lauded these liquid lullabies, claiming the continuous white noise effect masked jarring sounds carriages on cobbles or distant factory whistles and mimicked the womb-like warmth of amniotic fluid. Historians still argue whether the fountain's restful promise came from genuine psychoacoustic effects or if their novelty simply charmed weary minds into compliance. Several experimental salons took soundscaping even further, hosting soirees where attendees reclined on divans under a dome of hanging wind chimes, each chime tuned to a sleep chord frequency around 432 Hz. Pitch once believed to resonate with the human body's natural frequency. Technicians gently swayed the chimes using hidden fans, creating a shimmering cloud of metallic whispers. Fringe accounts suggest some hosts used live birds, canaries, and nightingales encased in soundproofed cages with small tubes directing birdsong into bedrooms. Though the ethics of caged bedroom pipelines rattled some reformers, you probably won't invite nightingales to your bedside table. But the image captures the eccentric lengths Victorians pursued to cultivate sleep by integrating music, mantra, and manifold murmurs. Victorians treated sound as both medicine and medium. You recall the mechanical rhythms from Section 13, the hushed mantras echoing in your mind, and the steady pulse of water behind your headboard. Each auditory element stitched into your sleepy cocoon, layering waves of comfort until your thoughts dissolved into the hush. Yet, even as you drift, you sense the debates that linger. Were these soundscapes clinical breakthroughs, or merely elaborate distractions? Historians still argue whether Victorian sound therapies laid groundwork for modern white noise machines and ASMR, or if they were quaint curiosities destined to vanish with the gas lamps. Now, as the gramophone's final lullaby faints into silence, and the chime's last echo dwindles, feel your breath lengthen and your muscles uncoil. The mantras retreat to whispered memory, the fountain's trickle becomes a soft pulse in your ears, and the world beyond the canopy dissolves. Sleep beckons in the space between notes, carried on the wings of sound itself, so let the last echo fade. Let your mind drift free of mechanical cogs and whispered chants, and surrender to nothing but the hush of your own heartbeat. Soon, you'll cross the threshold into dreams, serenaded by the Victorian soundscape now echoing in your bone. You sink into the soft embrace of your lavender-draped chaise, feeling the last echoes of gentle chimes fade behind you, and realize that Victorians often turned to the unseen realm to quiet anxious minds. Tonight, you step into a world of flickering candles, whispered invocations, and anointing oils scented with frankincense and myrrh, all promising to beckon benevolent spirits to ease your restlessness. You probably won't survive a seance without spooking yourself into wide-eyed terror, but tonight you're a willing participant in the Victorian occult's quest for sleep. So close your eyes for a moment, feel the hush of the room deepen, and let's drift into a seance chamber where the ethereal meets the slumbering. First, imagine a parlor lit by a circle of black taper candles, their smoke curling like ghostly dancers. By the 1850s, spiritualism had swept across England and America, fueled by the Fox sisters' 1848 claims of communicating with the dead. One mainstream historical fact: by 1860, hundreds of spiritualist societies hosted public seances weekly in London, drawing anxious souls seeking messages not just from lost loved ones but also advice on daily ailments including insomnia. You recline on a velvet divan, fingertips grazing the polished wood of the spirit table, and feel the room's charged expectancy, as if every flicker of candlelight might be a signal from beyond. You probably won't resist glancing at the medium, who sits across from you draped in veils of deep indigo, her face half hidden yet suffused with an otherworldly glow. With each gentle knock on the table, 2 taps for yes, 1 for no. She guides you to ask the spirits for calming influence over your weary mind. As the knocks respond, you sense a subtle vibration beneath your palm. A mainstream skeptic might call it ideomotor response, yet it feels undeniably like a gentle lullaby from the unseen. Historians still argue whether these communications sprang from genuine spirits or the subconscious impulses of participants, a debate that whispers through every seance account. Next, the medium unveils a small crystal phial of blended from lavender, bergamot, and a drop of ambergris, an exotic ingredient scraped from whale intestines and prized for its mysterious depth. You probably won't volunteer to sniff ambergris straight from an apothecary jar, but tonight you inhale its musky sweetness, imagining it as a bridge between the physical and spiritual planes. Fringe practitioners sometimes added a trace of mandrake-infused tincture to their spirit oil, claiming it sharpened the veil. Skeptics warned it merely triggered mild hallucinations. Scholars still debate whether mandrake's alkaloids genuinely loosened the psyche or merely lent credence to the seance's atmosphere. The medium gestures for you to anoint your temples in figure-8 motions, whispering rest in the arms of gentle spirits. You feel the oil's cool silkiness on your skin and inhale its layered aromas, a sensory ritual designed to still racing thoughts. In grander seances, some hosts arranged for spirit music. A harpist hidden behind velvet curtains plucked slow, mournful chords as the medium coaxed voices from beyond. One quirky tidbit: in certain seances held at the Royal Albert Hall, attendees reported smelling phantom aromas, jasmine or leather, purportedly signaling the presence of a particular spirit guide. You probably won't smell decades-old hauntings tonight, but the promise of mystical scent adds an enchanting layer to the ceremony. In addition to seances, many Victorians turned to spiritual healers who claimed to channel soothing magnetisms through gentle touch. You imagine reclining on a padded table as a healer's hands hover just above your body, then slowly pass down your arms and chest. One mainstream historical fact: by 1875, 6 prominent hydropathic hospitals in Britain offered electromagnetic healing sessions, borrowing from Mesmer's animal magnetism theories of the late 18th century. Patients reported feeling a warm, tingling current, though modern scholars still argue whether such sensations were physiological or psychosomatic, born of suggestion rather than genuine magnetic fields. After the seance, you're guided to a curtained alcove lined with violet-drenched tapestries where a small basin of consecrated water awaits. You dip your fingers and trace a carrot over your forehead, an anointing from the sleep spirits that, practitioners claimed, would guard your dreams against nightmares. Fringe spiritualists sometimes bottled and sold dream water, insisting it had touched the conjured presence of a benevolent guide. A few gossipy journals criticized these concoctions as little more than perfumed spring water. Historians still debate whether dream water sales were sincere spiritual commerce or opportunistic, profiteering on the era's occult craze. Nearby, a scrying bowl filled with milky water sits under a single candle. You peer into its surface, watching your reflection waver and shimmer. The medium murmurs that if you focus on the center and breathe steadily, you'll glimpse symbols guiding you to the perfect sleep remedy, perhaps a lavender bath or a barley cordial. You probably won't decipher mystical hieroglyphs tonight, but the act of gazing, of ritualized watching, calms your mind like a slow, meditative wave. For the truly daring, some spiritualist salons offered overnight sleep vigils. Participants spent the night on cushioned benches around a sacred circle, while mediums maintained an ongoing spiritual circle, weaving chants and minor key lullabies as guardianship. You imagine dozing off in half-dreams, the medium's soft incantations weaving through your REM cycles. One quirky tidbit: certain Vigils employed mechanical bird simulacra, clockwork, canaries that fluttered in gilded cages whenever spirits were supposed to draw near. You probably won't tolerate clockwork birds at 2 a.m., but the interplay of mechanical and mystical underscores the era's boundary-pushing creativity. In more private, domestic contexts, families kept small dream talismans by their beds, from broken gravestones, pressed wildflowers gathered at solstice, or lengthwise slices of mica believed to reflect spiritual light. You reach under your pillow and find a smooth riverstone instead, rubbed smooth by centuries of water. A gentle brush of your palm against it reminds you of the seance's promise that inanimate objects can hold intangible powers. Historians still argue whether these talismans served as meaningful psychological anchors or simply offered a comforting placebo at night's edge. When the seance concludes, the medium softens the light, extinguishing all but a single moon candle beside the door. You slip back to your bedchamber, the memory of knocks at the spirit table still pulsing at your fingertips. As you step beneath the quilts, you feel the oil's warmth pervade your temples and the talisman's cool solidity beneath your palm. The boundary between spiritual adventure and restful slumber blurs deliciously. Yet, even as your breath lengthens, the debates linger. Were these seances and spirit oils genuine conduits to cosmic helpers, or were they elaborate theater that lulled emptiness into peaceful blankness? Scholars still argue whether Victorian spiritual sleep cures arose from sincere metaphysical curiosity or from a broader, cultural anxiety seeking solace in any realm seen or unseen. But tonight, in the hush of extinguished candles and the soft weight of talismans, you're content to let those questions drift behind you. So, feel the faint hum of candle-warmed air around you, sense the last drop of spirit oil on your skin, and allow the knock of unseen visitors to fade into the gentle hush of your heartbeat. The veil between worlds grows thin as your eyes slip shut. Sleep awaits, guided by both science and spirit, in a timeless dance of belief and rest. You peel back your lavender-scented sheets and find, sitting on the washstand, curious collection of animal-derived curiosities, a small glass jar of dung beetles, a pillow stuffed with leech skins, and a whispered-in vial of mink fat balm. You probably won't survive a modern spa treatment that involves crawling insects and slimy leech remnants. But tonight you're diving into the most eccentric corners of Victorian sleep lore. So lean forward, let the strange tableau draw you in, and prepare to witness how practitioners looked to the animal kingdom for soporific salvation. First, consider the so-called beetle jar. In select apothecaries, pharmacists sold small, glass vials containing live dung beetles, Scarabaeus cicea, believing their low, rhythmic chirr could lull restless minds. One mainstream historical fact: in 1874, the British Ornithologist's Journal noted that naturalists first observed these beetles producing a faint clicking noise when agitated, and apothecaries adopted them as living white noise devices. You unscrew the jar's lid and hear a faint percussion, almost like gentle maracas tapping against silk, a sound said to override more disturbing urban clamor. Historians still argue whether the beetles' chirrs genuinely masked other noises or if the novelty of listening to insects distracted sufferers into drowsiness. Beside the beetle jar sits a small velvet pouch embroidered with a leech motif, inside of which rests several dried leech skins. You probably won't survive the thought of handling leeches in any form, but Victorians believed leech sloughings contained galvanic properties that calmed the nervous system. Fringe practitioners touted that wrapping a pillow in leech skins created a subtle electrical field that gently discharged built-up nervous tension. You rub the pouch against your temple, feeling a ghostly tingle, and wonder if the sensation comes from actual residual bioelectricity or simply from suggestion. Scholars still debate whether any measurable galvanic current persisted in these skins, or if the experience was purely psychosomatic. A third oddity demands your attention: the mink fat bomb, sold in tiny silver pots with lids shaped like animal paws. You lift the lid and inhale a heady, musky aroma that feels almost too potent for the night air. Mainstream apothecaries documented in 1861 that animal fats, especially from cold-weather critters like mink or bear, were believed to retain hibernation essence, a concept suggesting the fat carried an imprint of the animal's deep winter sleep. You dab a smidge on your wrists, the balm melting instantly into your skin, and feel a warming comfort creep along your veins. Historians still argue whether such animal fats held any biochemical sedative compounds, or if the so-called hibernation essence was a charming folk myth in service of imaginative marketing. Moving beyond these jars, you recall the strange leech pillow, a morale-boosting novelty traded among sleep salons. A leech merchant would skin dozens of leeches at dawn, stretch and dry the skins over a wooden frame, and then fill a pillow casing with the dried strips. The result, a pillow that, when pressed, rustled like leaves underfoot. Quirky enthusiasts claim that the subtle noise mimicked the hush of forest undergrowth, transporting sleepers away from city turmoil. You nestle your head into the fringe-crafted cushion and hear a dry crackle, as if stepping through autumnal woods, and feel your mind drift. Historians still argue whether the auditory effect held any sedative merit, or if the ritual of crafting and using the pillow was itself the true remedy. In rural Scotland, some families kept jars of electric eels, small amethyst glassfish, rather than true eels, tucked under their beds. These fish generated tiny jolts when provoked, and Victorians believed that gently touching the tank's glass produced microcurrents that soothed neural overactivity. You place your palm against the cool jar and feel a faint vibration, real or imagined, and reflect on how the boundary between living creatures and medical devices blurred in that era. Scholars still debate whether these fish ever generated enough current to influence human nerves or if the practice survived solely on hearsay. Not all animal oddities involved living or dried remains. Some intrepid apothecaries concocted moth wing shrouds, sheer fabric woven with powdered silkworm moth scales, worn as a shawl over the head at bedtime. The scales, so Victorians believed, carried the silkworm's deep cocoon rest through metamorphosis. You drape the gossamer cloth over your shoulders. It clings lightly, the fabric dusting your skin with a silken whisper. One mainstream historical fact: 1882 textile records show that silk weavers sometimes incorporated moth-derived powders into specialty textiles for rest attire. Historians still argue whether any insect-derived powder possessed actual soporific qualities or if the allure lay purely in the metaphor of transformation. Perhaps the strangest cure of all was the crow's beak talisman, an actual beak, bleached and polished, tied to a cord and hung above the bed. Victorian folklore held that the raven's uncanny association with night and mystery endowed its beak with protective powers against nightmares, effectively serving as a nocturnal guardian. Fringe healers sometimes inscribed runic symbols onto the beak, believing the etched patterns activated hidden energies. You position the talisman overhead, its curved silhouette framing the moonlit canopy, and sense a watchful presence in the room. Historians still debate whether such talismans offered genuine psychological comfort or functioned more as theatrical props in a broader sleep ritual. Your gaze drifts to a small crate of beetle jar, refill specimens dung beetles bred in apothecary back rooms to sustain the clicking chorus, and you realize how Victorians had cultivated entire micro-ecosystems as night-long companions. The line between medicine and menagerie blurred delightfully. Salons employed insect attendants to refresh beetle jars at midnight, while mink furriers supplied fresh adipose for balm, and fishermen gathered electric fish at dawn for the next night's demo. Historians still argue whether these animal-based remedies ever moved beyond eccentric curiosities into mainstream practice, or if they existed chiefly as Victorian parlor entertainments, masquerading as medical advances. You tuck the leech pillow under your head, adjust the mink fat balm on your temples, and let the muffled beetle clicks become the last notes in your nightly symphony. The hum of live fish currents, the rustle of dried skins, the soft flash of insect leg sole cocoon you in an ecosystem crafted for rest. You probably won't adopt any of these oddities wholesale. Yet there's a peculiar comfort in knowing that every corner of nature, however bizarre, was once enlisted to hush the mind's restless orchestra as you drift toward sleep. Remember that Victorians saw the animal kingdom not merely as resource but as collaborator in the quest for sleep, whether through beetle churl, bioelectricity, or mink-derived hibernation essence. Each oddity reveals an era unafraid to experiment at the margins of science and superstition. Historians still argue whether these practices reflect genuine folk breakthroughs or the theatrical flair of a culture enchanted by the strange. Yet tonight, cocooned in their inherited oddities, you find yourself surrendering to the animal chorus, and in that embrace, sleep comes. You pad into the candlelit dining room, where the heavy aroma of roast meats mingles with steaming puddings, and you realize that for Victorians, dinner wasn't just fuel, it was a prelude to slumber. Imagine yourself seated at a long oak table, set with pewter plates and flickering tallow candles, servants gliding silently among your feet. You probably won't survive a modern all-you-can-eat buffet with quite the same decorum, but tonight you're partaking in an evening meal packed with carbohydrates, rich sauces, and curious rituals meant to nestle you into dreams. So slide into your padded velvet chair, smooth your napkin across your lap, and prepare to witness how every spoonful and gesture aim to coax your body toward sleep. The main course arrives with a flourish, a steaming tureen of rice pottage enriched with cream and dotted with sweet raisins. This wasn't mere indulgence. Victorian physicians insisted on a heavy carbohydrate-forward supper to promote drowsiness. One mainstream historical fact: an 1867 medical journal recommended that insomniacs consume at least half a pound of starchy foods, potatoes, rice, or bread within 2 hours of bedtime, arguing that the insulin spike would divert blood flow to the digestive tract and calm restless nerves. You scoop a spoonful, feeling the velvety warmth of the pottage coat your tongue, the gentle sweetness a lullaby in itself. Historians still argue whether such dietary prescriptions genuinely induced sleep through physiological means, or simply reinforced the comforting ritual of a hearty evening repast. Beside the tureen sits a basket of mustard-dressed potatoes, their waxy skins cracked open to reveal pillowy flesh. You reach for one, spearing it on your fork, then pause as you remember the lucky ritual whispered among your friends to ensure a peaceful night. You must eat an odd number of potatoes and leave one untouched on the plate as an offering to the sleep spirits. You probably won't adopt potato sacrifice into your nightly routine. Poke at your dinner to please ghosts seems advanced even by today's food trends, but fringe enthusiasts swore that the untouched spud absorbed nightmares, leaving the eater's dreams untroubled. You tuck the spare potato under your napkin, smiling at the notion of your mashed offering serving as a spectral bedtime guard. Next comes a generous slice of cold roast beef, its edges crusted with garlic and rosemary. A swirl of onion gravy pools around it, and you feel the umami-rich sauce beckon you. In kitchens across the era, cooks prepared joint roasts every evening for the family table, believing red meat's iron content balanced the soporific effects of starch. A small porcelain dish of pickled walnuts sits nearby, a palate-cleansing fringe condiment said to clear the humors before the night's rest. You pop a walnut into your mouth, its sharp tang cutting through the gravy's richness, and marvel at how dinner combined both sedation and stimulation in equal measure. Across the table, butler passes a tureen of sleeping soup, a mild blend of parsnips, leeks, and barley in rich stock. You pour a modest bowl, noticing how the steam curls like ghostly fingers, carrying scents of earth and hearth. One quirky tidbit: some country gentry stirred a pinch of crushed poppy seeds into their soup, believing the opiate-laced garnish would gently nudge them toward dreams without the harsher effects of laudanum. You take a cautious sip and sense a faint, nutty warmth creeping through your chest, an edible whisper of sleep. Silver platters of buttered toast and slices of freshly baked brioche arrive next, each piece slathered with creamery butter and sprinkled with cinnamon. Victorians relished these sweetbreads as the grand finale of dinner. One mainstream historical fact: cookbooks from the 1870s routinely paired desserts like rice puddings or cinnamon toast with bedtime readings, prescribing that a final spoonful of sweetness locks in the night's repose. You tear off a corner of brioche, feeling its pillowy interior collapse under your teeth, and let the fragrant tickle of cinnamon settle on your palate. Historians still argue whether pairing desserts with a quiet reading hour was truly effective in soothing the mind, or if it simply mirrored class practices of cultivated leisure. Napkins smoothed and plates emptied, the table's centerpiece, glass bowl of sweet cordials, beckons. You pour a small glass of rosehip cordial, its rosy blush glowing in candlelight. A hush falls as guests are expected to raise their glasses in a silent toast to sound slumber. You lift your cup, feeling the tart fruit temps mix with a hint of brandy, and imagine the ripple of approval that followed this ceremony in genteel parlors. Fringe toasts sometimes included tapping the glass gently 3 times on the table and echo of seance knocks, believed to signal to protective spirits that the household welcomed their guardianship over dreams. You tap thrice, smiling at the memory of that knock-knock lullaby from the seance chamber. As the servants clear the dishes, they set out small bowls of fruited barley, water, hydration, and dessert in one. You sip slowly, the cold liquid, a soft counterpoint to the heated stoveroom behind you. Some apothecaries recommended adding a drop of phosphor elixir or a pinch of pulverized hops to the barley water, a fringe practice that turned the final drink into a microdose of medicinal sleep aid. You skip the additives tonight, yet you can't deny the soothing thrum of full stomach and warm home combining to press your eyelids down. Conversation dips to a hushed murmur as reading lamps are dimmed to their lowest wick. Today's topics give way to invocation of pleasant dreams, a practice popularized by etiquette manuals that instructed hosts to share dream suggestions. Short, positive anecdotes meant to occupy the mind just before slumber. You lean across the table and whisper of moonlit gardens and lavender baths, recalling our first section's twilight stroll. One quirky detail: some families passed around a dream scroll, a rolled parchment, inscribed with pastoral scenes and poetic lines that each guest read aloud before bedtime. You unroll a fragment, reading stanza by candle glow. May your sleep be soft as dove's wing, and your dreams like morning dew. Historians still argue whether such pre-sleep storytelling enriched dreams or simply served as polite discourse to fill the quiet lull before going to bed. Finally, the dining table is rolled away, replaced by a low ottoman bearing a silver tray with slippers and a nightcap for each guest. You rise, feeling the weight of a satisfied meal in your belly, each carbohydrate, protein, and sweet morsel having worked in concert to coax you toward the edge of consciousness. A violet-scented sachet is passed around. Each guest presses it to their nose, inhaling deeply, a final olfactory hug before the night's rest. As you step from the dining room into the corridor's hush, the candles flicker low, and the soft thud of slippers on carpet welcomes you back to your bedroom sanctuary. The warmth from your meal lingers in your limbs, a gentle reminder that nothing soothes body and mind quite like shared ritual and a full belly. So let the corridors fade behind you, and let the dinner's comfort settle into your bones. Sleep beckons through a haze of rice pottage and brioche crumbs. You probably won't host a 6-course carbohydrate feast every night, but you can borrow the essence, savor each bite, embrace the ritual, and let the meal itself become a lullaby. In the Victorian world, dinner was more than sustenance, it was an artful prelude to dreams. You slip into the tea parlor just as golden afternoon light filters through lace curtains, bathing the room in a soft honeyed glow. Plush settees and high-backed chairs invite you to recline, while the gentle clink of fine china whispers of soon-to-come slumbers. You probably won't survive a 21st century power nap in places other than your own bed. But tonight, you're stepping into the genteel world of Victorian afternoon naps and power doses. Those stolen pockets of rest that bridged the day's labors to the night's elaborate rituals. So settle into a velvet chaise, cradle your teacup, and let's explore how Victorians mastered midday repose as a remedy for insomnia's relentless grip. Afternoon napping wasn't merely a lazy indulgence, it was woven into the rhythm of daily life. One mainstream historical fact: by the 1880s, a growing number of middle and upper-class households maintained a siesta hour between 3 and 4 p.m., during which servants withdrew from public rooms and residents courted slumber in reserved parlors. Historians still argue whether these siestas sprang from Mediterranean influence or evolved organically as a countermeasure to the era's notoriously long workdays. You stretch out your legs, noticing how the velvet upholstery conforms to your body like a soothing cradle, and feel the pull of drowsiness tug at your eyelids. Slender silver trays bearing delicate dimitasses of green tea arrive, tea believed to offer both gentle stimulation and calming polyphenols. Contrary to modern caffeine jitters, Victorian tea masters recommended a blend of green and herbal leaves steeped for no more than 2 minutes to deliver a mild alertness that quickly subsided into relaxation. You lift the cup to your lips, savoring the tea's light sweetness and earthy finish. A fringe detail whispers that some enthusiasts dropped a sprig of goji berry into their afternoon brew, convinced its eastern vitality would sharpen their rest's restorative edge, though many found it tasted faintly like boiled raisins. You probably won't experiment with rare berries in your tea today, but the notion of a targeted tea infusion captures the era's experimental spirit. In one corner of the parlor stands a small brass gong, its mallet resting on a velvet cushion. Once your teacup empties, a discreet servant taps the gong 3 times, the signal that the nap ritual may commence. You recline fully now, folding a silk eye mask over your face. These weren't mere add-ins but essential accoutrements. Mainstream textile accounts from 1875 describe silk sleep masks lined with horsehair for light control and gentle scalp massage. Historians still debate whether these masks offered genuine photic isolation or whether the ritual of donning one primed the mind for sleep through psychological conditioning. As you nestle into the shadows of your mask, consider the ornate nap tent draped around select chaise lounges. These canopy-like structures, supported by ivory poles, framed a curtained alcove that shielded dozers from the prying eyes of household staff and curious visitors. Fringe sources claim some nap tents incorporated hidden pockets stuffed with crushed hops and valerian, so each slight breeze released a microdose of botanical calm. You feel a faint herbal tickle against your cheek and wonder if the fragrance seeps in by design or by mere proximity to a nearby sachet. Scholars still argue whether scent-infused nap enclosures delivered measurable sedative benefits or if they primarily served as fashionable curiosities. The preferred position for a Victorian nap was not fully horizontal but semi-reclined, a posture said to encourage gentle circulation and prevent the dreaded nap slump. You prop to matching pillows behind your back and elevate one leg slightly, an arrangement recommended in a 1891 wellness pamphlet to prevent digestive sluggishness after tea. You close your eyes, allowing the room's hush to cradle you, but remain vigilant for the unmistakable ring of the gong, which promised a precisely timed doze. How long to nap? Here, Victorian advice coincided with modern sleep science. 15 to 20 minutes, no more. A 1883 health guide insisted that any longer interrupted the body's restorative microcycle and left one feeling more fatigued than before. Surrender to the gentle descent of consciousness, counting your breaths as they align with the soft tick of a nearby mantel clock, and drift into the light space between wakefulness and dreams. In rural manor houses, the nap ritual sometimes took place outdoors in a summer house or gazebo where cotton drapes billowed in a gentle breeze. You might recline beneath a trellis of climbing roses, the sky's blue canvas punctuated by drifting clouds. A fringe pastoral practice involved weaving fresh lavender into the thatch of the pavilion's roof, so as you exhaled, floral essences mingled with the afternoon air. Historians still debate whether these open-air naps truly harnessed fresh oxygen's restorative power or if they simply offered a charming backdrop for a nap. Photo op: in the age of steam, you're awakened not by jarring alarm clocks, those were deemed barbaric, but by the delicate toll of a handbell, rung softly at precisely 15 minutes past the hour. The servant tiptoes and brushes the tea crumbs from your lap, and offers a glass of warm barley water, its sweetness a gentle transition back to alertness. You sip the liquid, its soothing warmth reminding you of the barley water baths discussed earlier, and feel clarity bloom in your chest as drowsiness relinquishes its hold. Before you rise, you're invited to engage in a post-nap cordial stretch, a sequence of gentle limb movements recommended to invigorate spirits and reorient the senses. You flex your ankles, rotate your wrists, and stretch your arms skyward, each motion held for count of 4, an echo of rhythmic sleep research far ahead of its time. One curious anecdote describes some houses issuing printed nap exercise cards illustrating each stretch in delicate sepia sketches, an early precursor to modern guided movement programs. You probably won't laminate an exercise guide for your next nap, but you appreciate how structured these midday rests could be. Rising fully upright, you smooth your skirt or adjust your waistcoat, inhaling the lingering scent of hops and lavender that clung to the nap canopy. You return the eye mask to a silver tray, where it rests alongside a tiny vial of rose water you might spritz across your forehead to refresh the skin after dozing. A mainstream hygiene manual from 1880 extolled the virtues of rose water as both cleanser and mild astringent for post-nap renewal. Historians still argue whether these aromatic spritzes served any real dermatological benefit or if they functioned primarily as sensory punctuation in a broader nap ceremony. As you step back into the scented parlor, servants resume their quiet choreography, folding tapestry throws, adjusting porcelain knickknacks, and filling fresh teacups. The world beyond the parlor returns with a muted clatter. A carriage rattles along cobblestones, children laugh in the courtyard, and distant steam whistles herald the trains at the station. Yet inside, you carry the calm residue of your nap, the gentle hush behind your eyelids, the rhythmic ease of your breath, and the faint echo of the gong. You probably won't integrate a daily siesta with silk masks and barley water sips into your modern routine, but you can still glean the core lesson: intentional, timed rest can reset both body and mind, providing a buffer against the nighttime's more elaborate sleep rituals. The Victorians understood that insomnia didn't only strike in the dark. It stemmed from the day's buildup of tension, exhaustion, and sensory overload. By carving out a sacred quarter-hour, they reclaimed a sliver of serenity in an age defined by progress and industrial roar. As you exit the parlor and rejoin the day's labors, you carry a whisper of that chrysalis-like common interlude, woven from tea lace and the soft toll of a gong. Let that calm accompany you through dinner preparations, moonlit baths, and lavender cordials. When night falls once more, you'll find your bed not only as a place for sleep, but as the final stop on a day meticulously orchestrated to cradle you toward dreams. And remember, historians still argue whether Victorian power naps were brilliant prototypes for modern polyphasic rest or charming relics of a bygone etiquette. But tonight, as you settle into your velvet-lined four-poster, you'll know the truth. A well-timed nap can be the bridge that carries you from the hustle of afternoon to the hush of night. Let that bridge bear you gently, and prepare for your final evening adventures. Dreams await. You settle into your four-poster haven and open a weathered leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age and inked with the shakings of sleepless nights. Tonight, you become both reader and subject in the intimate world of Victorian insomnia, testimonials, where personal diaries lay bare the moonlit vigils and experimental cures that left their authors both hopeful and haunted. You probably won't survive reading these raw confessions without feeling your own heartbeat quicken, but lean in. Let their voices wash over you and prepare for a journey through first-person accounts of sleepless nights. One aristocrat's diary, penned in 1879 by Lady Eleanor Fairchild of Hampshire, begins each entry with a lament. Midnight tolls, and still I lie awake, haunted by the echo of horses' hooves. She records precise details: the clink of her chamber pot at 2:15 a.m., the flourish of her butler delivering a cup of barley water at 3:07. One mainstream historical fact: by the 1880s, it was common for upper-class women to keep daily diaries as part of their education in composition and self-reflection, producing tens of thousands of private journals each year. Historians still argue whether these diaries reflected honest catharsis or performed an aspirational persona for posterity. In a later entry, Lady Eleanor describes her attempts at lavender cordials. I sipped the violet nectar beneath the moon's chill gaze. By the third swallow, I dreamt of silver swans gliding on a frozen lake, yet at dawn, fatigue clung tighter than ivy. Her formula included a drop of wormwood tincture, a quirky detail she notes with both pride and regret. Wormwood's reputed the ability to conjure vivid dreams proved a double-edged sword. My mind soared and crashed in riotous flight. She writes, 6 nights in a row. Historians still debate whether such additives offered real neurochemical effects or simply amplified the placebo of elaborate ritual. Turn the page, and you meet the diary of Thomas Bridger, a night watchman in an East London factory, whose cramped script tells of a very different struggle. For a.m. he scrolls under a shaky heading: the clang of the last tram is my lullaby. I chew a nettle cordial brewed in tin mugs, its sting the only thing that numbs my thoughts. One fringe tidbit he records: he once slept with a live cricket in a small wooden matchbox under his pillow, believing the insect's chirp would mask the factory's whistles. You might shudder at the thought, but he swears it worked at least, until the cricket escaped and joined him in a midnight scream. Scholars still argue whether working-class diaries like Bridges genuinely captured common practice or survived only in sensationalized excerpts, later anthologized by folklorists. A third journal belongs to Dr. Frederick Holroyd, a pioneering, yet controversial hydropathist who chronicled his own experiments alongside patient records. In an 1886 entry, he details a full nocturnal immersion by moonlight bath, 12 p.m. The water measured precisely 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I lingered 20 minutes, wrapped in furs afterward. My pulse dropped from 78 to 62. I felt at once both chilled and comforted. His hand-drawn chart shows heart rate fluctuations before and after treatment. One mainstream historical fact: Victorian physicians increasingly quantified patient experiences, pioneering early forms of physiological monitoring such as pulse charts and temperature logs. Historians still argue whether these early measurements preceded truly scientific sleep studies or simply lent a veneer of legitimacy to experimental therapies halfway through. Holroyd's entry: he concedes a relapse despite the cold's tonic embrace. At 3:30 a.m. I found my mind racing with lectures yet delivered and papers unwritten. He jots a remedy: a slushy camphor waterhead wrap followed by a small dose of phosphorus elixir. Then a final note scrawled in the margins: perhaps no cure exists but rest itself. You feel a pang of empathy. His search mirrors your own. As you navigate between lotions, baths, and contraptions, dive deeper, and you discover a coded dream register kept by Miss Clara Vaughan, a governess in Brighton. Her entries list dream titles: The Opera of Wolves, A Midnight Tea with Phantoms, each followed by a numerical code indicating her perceived restfulness on a scale from 1 to 10. Fringe scholars once believed these encoded registers were occult dream diaries tied to Victorian spiritism, but recent scholarship suggests they were simply private mood logs. Historians still debate whether dream journals like Clara's reflect genuine attempts at self-therapy or performed a nascent form of psychological survey. In one particularly vivid entry, Clara notes: I awoke at 2:42 a.m. to record a nightmare of dancing skeletons, then forced myself back to sleep by humming Rockabye Baby under my breath. This callback to lullaby soundscapes reveals how intertwined remedies could be: music, ritual, and self-soothing mantras merging in one sleepless household. You imagine her soft hum rippling through the dark, a solitary performance echoing across generations. Beyond private diaries, snippets of letters and commonplace books reveal communal insomnia rituals. You'll find a letter from a Mrs. Agnes Porter, inviting a friend to her Moonlight circle in 1875. Bring your lavender sachet, your hopcap, and your bravest heart. We meet by the pond at 9, sup cold barley wine, and immerse ourselves under Orion's belt. You sense both camaraderie and desperation, thrill of shared eccentricity mixed with the raw need for relief. One quirky detail: Agnes recounts a participant who brought a cage of live snails to channel their slow dreams, a practice that historians still argue was mere parlor entertainment or a heartfelt botanical experiment. Flip deeper, and you reach a fragment from a prison chaplain's notebook, charting insomnia among convicts in 1890. He observed that nearly 40% of inmates confessed to never sleeping more than 2 consecutive hours. To cope, prisoners reportedly inscribed marks on cell walls tallying each hour of wakefulness, creating a grim timeline of human endurance. Remarkably, some inmates traded portions of their meager gruel for herbs smuggled by sympathetic guardsmen, hops, even lavender scraps torn from pillowcases. Scholars still debate whether these clandestine prison remedies spread through whispered networks or were isolated acts of quiet rebellion. As you close the final diary, a portrait of collective insomnia emerges, whether highborn or low healer, or patient Victorians documented their suffering with surprising candor. Each testimonial, mainstream or fringe, contributes a thread to the tapestry of nocturnal life. You've read of Lady Eleanor's cordials, Bridges' crickets, Holroyd's pulse charts, Clara's dream codes, Honest's snail circles, and even prison walls scrawled with hours of wake. Through all these narratives, one scholarly debate persists: did these personal records drive genuine medical advances, or were they primarily acts of self-expression in a rapidly modernizing world? You lay the journal aside and feel the hush settle. The voices of these diarists, workers, doctors, dreamers linger like gentle specters in your mind. Their rituals, from the botanical to the mechanical to the mystical, chart a relentless search for rest. But now, their confessions become your lullaby. As you close your eyes, you carry their stories into your sleep, joining the ranks of insomnia, warriors who dared to record not only their dreams but the fierce journey to attain them. In that quiet boundary between wakefulness and slumber, you realize that every remedy, every page, every heartbeat charted in ink has guided you closer to the frontier of dreams. Historians still argue about the reliability and impact of these diaries, but tonight, their voices matter only for the comfort they offer your own weary mind. Sleep approaches as softly as a pen's final stroke on parchment. Let the testimonials fade and surrender to the hush. You sink back into your four-poster sanctuary as dusk bleeds into night. the last hues of sunset shimmering on polished wood, and you realize that every Victorian insomnia cure, herbal infusion, moonlit dip, mechanical device, mystical rite was stitched into a grand twilight ritual meant to shepherd sleepers across the threshold between day and dream. Imagine a ceremony so elaborate it unfurls like a tapestry, a final cup of lavender cordial, a whispered mantra, the careful donning of nightwear, a measured cold water shock, and at last, the light's soft surrender. You probably won't survive. Recalling all 20 remedies at once, your head might spin, but tonight, you're about to enact the ultimate Victorian slumber sequence, weaving every thread into a single bespoke ritual. So draw the curtains halfway, leave just enough moonlight to gild the room, and let your heart settle as you prepare for this twilight symphony. Begin with a pale tea of violet-hued dreamweaver, blend passion flower, skullcap, and blue vervains in barely simmering water for 3 minutes. One mainstream historical fact: Victorian physicians often prescribed such botanical blends as part of a pre-sleep course, noting in 1883 that a single well-timed infusion could lower resting pulse by up to 8 beats per minute. As you cradle the china cup, inhaling the herbal steam, you feel the first tendrils of calm winding through your limbs, an overture to the ritual's deeper movements. Next, move to the washstand for a brisk ankle effusion, pouring 15 degrees Celsius, water over each foot for precisely 2 minutes, an echo of cold water therapy's vascular ballet. Historians still argue whether such temperature shocks genuinely redirected blood flow or simply served as a brisk placebo that left patients too chilled to think. You feel the water's bite, then pat your feet dry with a lavender-infused flannel. The fragrant fibers both warming and soothing. Now, slip into nightwear, lavender-dyed cotton night corset tied loosely, accompanied by a silk cambric nightcap laden with hops. One fringe tidbit: some experimental tailors wove a thread of phosphorescent powder into nightcaps so they glowed faintly under moonlight, believed to guide dreamers gently towards slumber. You adjust your cap and feel its soft pressure sealing in warmth and intent. Return to the bed's edge for the phosphor kiss, a single drop of phosphorus elixir on your tongue, just enough to prime your nervous system without overwhelming it. Mainstream apothecaries in 1871 touted this dose as critical for brain workers, to align mind and body before rest. Scholars still debate whether phosphorus truly energized nerve membranes, or if its role was more symbolic, a nod to emerging neurology amid the era's grand sleep experiments. With your senses attuned, light your gas lamp's dream shade, an amber-tinted globe named Somnolux that bathes the room in soft, rosy glow. You dim the central chandelier and allow only this muted light to linger. Historians still argue whether tinted glass altered circadian cues or if its benefit lay in signaling to the mind that the day was truly done. Now comes the heart of the ceremony, the mechanical embrace. A gentle pull on the canopy tassel triggers the hidden clockwork that rocks your bed at 20 revolutions per minute. You lie back, feeling the timber frame sway like a mother's cradle. One mainstream historical fact: patent records from 1892 list at least 3 automatic bed rockers, marketed expressly to insomniacs, each promising faster sleep onset. In the hush of the swaying, you sense your spine's micro-movements quieting, your thoughts drifting as the rocking begins. A distant phonograph quietly spins a custom lullaby, a harp glissando layered with whispered Om Shanti mantras, recorded in cinnamon-infused wax. Fringe salons of the 1880s experimented with scented sound cylinders, combining audio and aroma, this one imbued with rosewater and frankincense. You inhale the blended scents as the music whispers, each note unspooling tension from your nerves halfway through the rotation. A small aperture in the wall opens to release a measured puff of hydropathic steam scented with hops and mint, an echo of the Moonlight Bathist multisensory ritual. You feel the gentle mist kiss your skin, drawing warmth across chilled risers. In this twilight arc, you pause for a moment of stillness, a final sip of lavender cordial from a crystal decanter, its sweetness pooling in your chest like a lullaby. You taste the honey's warmth and the floral whisper of petals, a sensory punctuation that tethers you to this precise moment between day and sleep. As the ceremony winds down, the rocking slows to a halt. The phonograph's final notes soften into silence, and the lamp's amber glow dims to a hush. You reach for a small mothwing shroud and drape its gossamer fold over your head, a cocoon of silk and hushioned. Place a polished crow's beak talisman above your pillow, its curved silhouette a guardian of dreams. Historians still debate whether such talismans offered real psychological comfort or were purely theatrical props. Yet here, swaddled in shroud and symbol, you feel watched over by both nature and myth. With every element: tea, cold water, nightwear, phosphorus, light, motion, sound, steam, scent, ritual objects in harmony. Your body and mind align for rest. You nestle into the lavender sachet stuffed pillow, its hop-filled heart pressing gently against your neck. The room's layers of warmth, fragrance, motion, and muted light have woven a net of serenity around you, and in that soft embrace, sleep beckons. As your eyelids grow heavy, recall each step of the twilight ritual: the herbal overture, the cooling shock, the tactile comfort, the sensory crescendo. You've enacted a symphony of Victorian ingenuity, science, superstition, artistry designed to guide you across the threshold of slumber. Now, let the final hush carry you into dreams. You drift, let your heartbeat slow to a gentle tide, each rise and fall a soft echo of the moon's own rhythm. Feel the plush weight of blankets nestling you, a warm cradle that mirrors the rocking bed's final motion. Inhale the faint trace of lavender and hops, the room's last fragrant offering, and exhale into the darkness that feels softer with every breath. Allow your limbs to grow heavy, as though the air itself holds you, each sinew unspooling like silk in a light breeze. Imagine the soft pulse of phosphorescent powder fading, the amber glow of somnolex dwindling to a memory, and the lingering warmth of your cordial's sweetness dissolving into the hush. Picture moonbeams drifting through the curtains, dusting your vision with silver, and let their cool shimmer sweep away any lingering wakefulness. You are held in a cocoon of centuries-old care, every remedy, every ritual, every whispered mantra, joining in gentle chorus to sing you toward dreams. There is no rush, no final note to attend, only the slow, endless unfolding of night, where even silence carries you deeper. As your thoughts soften, imagine them gathering at the edge of a still pond, each warrior pebble dropped into velvet water, rippling outward until they vanish in the dark. Trust the hush to carry you onward. Trust the wisdom of whispered oils, of cold water rites, of rocking beds and mechanical lullabies. Let this moment extend as long as it needs, each second a soft sigh of release. Tonight, you are wrapped in the gentle genius of those who sought rest long before our time. Now, surrender to the quiet invitation of sleep, and drift away on the silver tide of dreams.